Good evening, everyone, and thanks for your attendance here tonight. Officially open the agenda forum at 6 p.m. I'd like to start by saying Kaya Wanju Mali Budja. Hello, welcome to Swan Country. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and their descendants. Item 2 is the disclaimer. Agenda forums are specifically for agenda items which are to be considered by Council at the next ordinary meeting of Council. Agenda forums are not decision-making forums. They provide an opportunity for councillors to be equally informed and seek additional information on matters prior to the presentation of such matters to the next ordinary meeting of Council for formal consideration and decision. Please note that this meeting is being live-streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on the City's website after the meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time, deputation time, it is assumed your consent for your audio to be recorded is given. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and to other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured. Item 3, attendance and apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Kiley, an apology from the CEO, Jeremy Edwards. Are there any others, councillors? I note Councillor Podolnik's not present, and hopefully she'll join us shortly.
Mr. Mayor, Mark Bishop will be joining us online, but he may be a bit late.
Thank you. And item 4. Declarations of financial proximity interest or interest affection impartiality. Are there any councillors? Mr Acting CEO.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. We've received one disclosure of an impartiality interest from Councillor Charlie Zanino on item 5.4, Baskerville Drainage Study, as Councillor Zanino is related to one of the affected property owners.
Any other councillors? Thank you. Just before moving to item 5, I'd like to make a short statement. This evening I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Giovanni Stefanelli, a local businessman, an honorary freeman of the city who passed away last Friday, the 18th of February. Mr Stefanelli and the Stefanelli family have been integral and continue to be a significant part of the City of Swan community. In addition to being a self-made businessman, he also built and served as president of the Swan Italian Club. He wrote their constitution. He served on the board of the Swan Chamber of Commerce and was the chairperson of the Midland College of TAFE, among countless other roles in the more than 70 years he spent living in Midland. Mr Stefanelli and his family have also made a substantial contribution to the playground at Weir Park, for which the city is forever grateful. The city awarded Mr Stefanelli Honorary Freeman in 2019. He was a strong family man who valued spending time with his family. He always said that time management was the key to his success and using his ability. On behalf of the city and the council and our residents, I wish to pass on our heartfelt condolences to his family. Thank you. We'll now move to item 5 on the agenda, public questions. Questions relating reports contained in the agenda, and item 5.1, we had 4 questions from Dr Marilena Stempfel. Questions 2 and 3, Dr Stempfel, have been taken on notice, and that will be given to you in written format in due course. The other questions have been answered in the document. So does anything arise out of those questions? Well, if you've got any issues with the answers, if you want to raise them now. Okay, thank you.
Works first time I do this part of the meeting. So you said that the stockpiles were considered for use in the construction, but it was decided not to use them. So one has to assume that the one that is opposite to Bunnings, which is a contaminated cell, with lots of cracks in the clay cover, which means water can go in, leach out metals, and whatever was put inside there is reporting to the groundwater into the floodplain, which is probably unacceptable and is not meeting the EPA requirements. What's going to happen to that contaminated soil now that is there leaching freely into the environment since it cannot be used? And what is happening to the stockpiles on the southern side of the Lloyd Street Bridge? We see them are huge, full of weeds, and they are going to be there in perpetuity, or will they be moved?
Thank you. I'll have to refer to Mr Coaten, and if you need to take the item on notice, you may.
But that's all right. It is intended to move them, but the exact location and timing is unknown.
Yeah. Thank you. And can I ask another question as a follow-up, Mr Mayor?
If it relates to the questions you previously asked, yes.
Yeah, so is there any connection between the current design of the bridge and the initial desire to use the stockpiles as part of the infield ramps? Is that why there were no other designs considered?
Mr Coaten?
The stockpiles didn't influence the design, if that's the question that I think you're asking.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it, right? There is no other answer there that I have to comment on? Sorry, so question 2, 3, and A3 will be answered later, correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for your patience.
My pleasure. There are 5 questions from Dr Robert Illich. Is he in attendance? No, those questions have been answered. Which takes us to item 5.2, questions without due notice on any items on the agenda. So does anyone else in the gallery have a question relating to items on the agenda? We've got Miss Nikki Riggs from Ellenbrook here. Thank you, Nikki. This is the time to ask your question. If you can come up to the microphone and ask your question, please. If you just push the speak button and adjust the microphone and just speak clearly. Thank you.
Sorry, Cheers. Thanks. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. We've received ratepayers in Ellenbrook received an email from Ken Wyatt, who is the federal member for Hasluck, concerning the Ellenbrook pool. I was wondering what was going on with the Ellenbrook pool. It says within the email that $25 million was actually set aside for the Ellenbrook pool. I've been living in Ellenbrook 12 years now, and there are nine schools in the Ellenbrook area, and we're wondering what's happening to our pool. The area was actually started in 2019 or 20. It was cleared and it's come to a standstill. We're wondering whether or not the funds are going to be allocated elsewhere, or is the pool going in?
Well, I'll start. The funds will not be allocated by the City of Swan anywhere else. The report is coming to Council. The Council will make a decision next week on that project. If you had the opportunity to read the officer's report, due to the hot construction price at the moment, we've been out to tender twice. The tenders were initially accepted and then went way over the tender price, so both the contractors have withdrawn from those contracts, and we're just having a report back to Council. One of the suggestions is, in the officer's recommendation, that we put it on hold for a short time until the construction prices come back to a more reasonable level. Otherwise, the project will have to borrow money to make up the shortfall.
Okay, so it's not being cancelled overall?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in tonight and asking that question. Are there any other questions without due notice from people in the gallery? Then we'll move to item 6, reports and motions of which previous notice have been given, and 6.1, additional information from officers in Part A. Item 13.9, Councillor Bowman, club signage and sporting reserves on page 59. Councillor Bowman. I think there's a slight correction or deleting of a word in your motion.
Through you, Mr Mayor, just taking the word council out at the request of one of the other councillors.
Thank you. Back to you again, Councillor Bowman. Item 13.10, review of ward boundaries and representations on page 61, councillors.
Mr Mayor, there's just a slight change. We can't have a predetermined view on a ward boundary review, so it's just a focus being to consider as opposed to a purpose being to reduce.
Thank you. So there's a removal of 2 words. And part B, item 2.1, policy review procurement on page 77. That report required some amendments and attachments, and they're detailed in your schedule, councillors. That part of the table dealing with clause 7.1 of the current policy, part 2.8 of the revised policy should be read as in this document for your consideration next week. Item 4.1, submissions proposed amendment to number 201 local planning scheme number 17, further additional use. Yeah. Sorry. A further additional use of a garden centre in addition to use number 55 in Stirling Crescent, Guildford. It's on page 103, councillors. The schedule of submission in these documents available on the city's website have been replaced. The original versions included email addresses of the submitters, and those email addresses have now been removed. So for your information and that of the gallery. We're now up to item 6.2, which is deputations. And in accordance with the current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations and submissions of written deputations were required by 3 p.m. Tuesday, February 22nd. All written deputations received by 3 p.m. Tuesday the 22nd were circulated with the preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening, and there are also attachments for written deputations. In Part A of the agenda there were nil. In Part B, item 4.1, consideration of submissions proposed for Amendment 201 of Local Planning Scheme number 17, further additional use of a garden centre in Stirling Street, Guildford. It's on page 103, councillors. There are 2 in-person deputations, and the first one is Mrs Helen Quaife. Mrs Quaife, if you could come to the podium, turn your microphone on by pushing the speak button, and you have 5 minutes to make your deputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Council, for taking the time to listen to me. I'm here to fully support and endorse the recommendations by the City of Swan for the application by Hort Plan to extend the proposed change for the use of 24 Stirling Street to that of Garden Centre. In its short life, the post has made a significant contribution to Guildford. It is recognised by those who visit Guildford as a major destination alongside the Rose and Crown and the Guildford Hotel. It is a place that not only attracts visitors, but one that sees people returning time and time again. Isn't that what we want in the City of Swan, a memorable destination? What Mike and Kim Noonan have brought to this location is visionary. It is long overdue in raising the profile of Guildford. They have not only invested in a building, but they have also invested in a community and its history. The post office has been resurrected in a truly imaginative way, as has the clock. What a bonus. The Noonans are proving to be the ideal custodians of an important piece of Guildford's heritage. Since 2012, the post has evolved to be the most perfect gateway to the Swan Valley. In one small corner of Guildford, the Noonans have transformed a space that encapsulates everything we know about the Swan Valley. Its history, beautiful buildings, wonderful flora, fine food, a place to gather, even a place to reflect and feel calm. It is the most perfect billboard for what a visitor to the Swan Valley can expect. It also has Heritage Council support. To the objectors, the arguments I've heard resonate with hypocrisy and double standards. You offered nothing as an alternative to this glorious old building. The main objections I have heard are parking. I drive in and out of Guildford every day at numerous times of the day. I see no issue with parking during the times the post is open for business. The only issue I've seen with parking, and that I've come across, is made by residents placing illegal signs outside their residence forbidding parking. The Garrick Theatre and the Stirling Arms compete for parking, vehicles strewn everywhere on verges, under trees, along residential roads. I hear no dissension on this issue. Duplication of business, that's another one. I hear Guildford already has a garden centre. Well, Guildford also has 4 pubs, countless coffee shops, gift shops, the list goes on. I hear no dissension about these businesses. Noise, smell, imposts on residents. Well, all these things pale into insignificance when you weigh it up against the frequency of the trains travelling through the heart of Guildford, the aircraft, the 24-hour drum of the Great Eastern Highway, the crowds that flock to the pubs at the weekends. I hear no dissension on these activities. Council, ask yourself, is the post any more offensive? Councillors, are you a group of visionaries like the Noonans who understand the synergy that needs to be harnessed between past and present? Are you a group who wants to lift the standards of City of Swan and deliver amenities and community hubs benefiting the 21st century? Are you a group who will nurture and encourage enterprises that respect and enhance Guildford's heritage? The numbers are on the board. The proof is already there. This business belongs in Guildford. This business has been embraced by the majority of the community. This business will go on to inspire others, bringing vibrancy, pride and life back into this historic corner of WA. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Quaife. Are there any questions, councillors? Sorry, if you could return to the podium. Councillor Catalano has a question.
Yes, thank you for that. The question I'd like to ask is, do you think that it's appropriate for some businesses to just set up a business without proper planning process or go through the proper planning process and approval process, and then expect others to go through that process? So what I'm trying to say is, you see, what I'm trying to ask you is it okay for some businesses to shortcut the process or go around the process, and for other businesses in Guildford to have to go through that arduous process of getting their planning applications through?
Well, from what I know about the post, it's been an administration oversight. When they bought the property in 2012, they went through all the right channels, applying for everything they needed to at the time. But what they haven't had is response back from the City of Swan. So I think you need to ask your administration why Mike and Kim Noonan's requests to applications haven't been responded to. So that's all I can say on that question.
Okay. But I think my question was, though, is it fair for... Do you think
I think
it's
your
fair?
question was possibly a trick question.
Well, not really. I mean, is it fair?
Councillor Catalano, I'm going
to
stop the questioning there. We're considering a submission for a scheme amendment. That is what is before council, not what's happened in the past. So if you've got another question you'd like to ask Mrs. Quaife, you may ask it. If not, any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
The next speaker on the sign. No, you ask a question of staff now. Sorry, I'll call Mr. Noonan up shortly. You've got a question of staff. Thank you, Councillor Podovnik. Please ask it. Well, if you can ask it now.
It's probably a bit premature, but I wanted to ask you, why are we proceeding with a scheme amendment where there has been quite a raft of issues raised by the community? Why aren't we dealing with those planning issues now to see if they even can be resolved before we move on to a scheme amendment? Can you just give us a bit of information as to why we're not taking that tact?
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because the cart can't come before the horse, Mr. Mayor. In order to get to the point of considering the detailed issues that the community has raised on this amendment, which is you deal with at a development application stage, we can't deal with a development application with any form of discretion to approve or refuse until this amendment has been dealt with. So it must happen this way. There is no other way it could happen.
Just another question. In the case of this business, because it's been operating for so many years, surely that sort of puts it in a different category where we can begin to look at safety issues or some of the concerns that were raised prior to even looking at the scheme amendment. Is it possible to park the scheme amendment and address some of these planning concerns that continue to come before us?
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor, I'll answer the last part quickly. It's open to the council to resolve not to proceed with this scheme amendment next week. It can do that. What I would say, though, is many of the issues that have been raised here, as the report reflects, were actually dealt with when this council dealt with the application for the cafe restaurant. All of the issues, parking, all of those other bits and pieces, the parking was a strong one, were looked at as part of that application. So we have done some of that. And what you might say is the benefit of considering an application for a use that's already there is you're not hypothesising or estimating. You are, in fact, dealing empirically with the operation and issues of the facility as it exists. So it's open to the council if it wants to make that decision not to proceed, but we're quite comfortable, as the report states, in saying that the issues have either been partially addressed already or can very comfortably be addressed if and when we deal with a development application, and that's dependent upon how this council, well, to some extent how this council might vote next week, but irrespective, ultimately, this amendment will be determined by the Minister. So we'll have to wait and see, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you're next for a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to the planning staff. When Mrs Quay spoke, she said that the staff had not responded to Mr Noonan's application. Can the staff comment on what happened?
Mr Mayor, this is a very storied tale, okay? And Mr Noonan will probably have more to add to it. In very succinct summary for all our benefit, the owners, as I understand it, prior to purchasing this property in 2013, met with senior staff at the time. That wasn't me. And it may have been with members of council. I can't comment on the nature of what was asked and the nature of what information was ventured in response. But the simple facts are this. Planning approval is required for the uses that are existing there. Staff made it plain that the only means of advancing or contemplating the approval of the uses that operate from the site is necessarily by way of making a scheme amendment. Now, whilst the scheme amendment was offered by the proponent some years ago, the simple facts are no fees were paid. We don't do work for free, Mr Mayor. All businesses, even a government service, comes with a fee. So nothing gets actioned until an applicant pays a fee. It can't be otherwise. So even though there might have been, and that's partly the reason, from an explanation from the administration why you have had such a delay in the advancement of the scheme amendment before you tonight.
Thank you. And Councillor Catalano, you had a further question?
No, that's right, because that was just answered then. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll call the next speaker to the microphone, Mr Michael Noonan. Mr Noonan here? Oh, thank you. If you could put, I just can't see the microphone. If you make sure the red light, that's it. And you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Before I start, Mr Mayor, could I just clarify my submission substantially deals with the history of our involvement. Is it appropriate that I run through that?
Well, you've got 5 minutes,
Yep.
So you use that time however you like, whether you want to go back into history or what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
And once you start speaking, I'll start the stopwatch. Thank you.
So good evening to Mayor, councillors and staff. My wife Kim and I are the owners of the Guildford Post Office building. I would like to speak tonight to the subject of the current application, which is our second application for an additional use, being for a garden centre for our property. First application being in 2012, soon after we purchased the building. Some councillors will be well informed on the history and development of our ownership of the property. However, for the benefit of new councillors, I would like to provide a brief background. In late 2011, we noticed the property was for sale and we proceeded to make an offer for the place, which was accepted. One of the conditions of our offer was, in prior to settlement on the property, was for us to be satisfied that our intended uses would be acceptable to the City of Swan. To this end, we arranged for and attended a meeting with the City where we tabled our plans for the site, which included a boutique garden centre and offices for our landscape business. The meeting was very positive. We were informed that an additional use application would be required, but it was agreed that we would commence with our plans for the business. On 19th of March 2012, we settled on the purchase of the property and shortly after submitted an application for additional use being a garden centre. On June the 6th, 2012, our application was receipted by the City. On the 14th of June 2012, our payment of heritage fees was receipted by the City, and shortly after this we noticed our rates were based on a commercially zoned property. We also note that the Heritage Council confirmed in writing on the 31st of July 2012, I have a copy here of that document from the Heritage Council, supporting our application in 2012, and the Heritage have again supported our application in 2021. Heritage states that the proposed change of use is considered to represent a positive outcome for the place. As the officer's report to Council notes, there were 33 submissions received as a result of the required public consultation for the additional use we are seeking, and it is pleasing for us to note that 65% approximately of these submissions, plus all of the agencies, were supportive of our application and use of the property. I would like to address what we believe are inaccuracies in some of the objections submitted during the public consultation phase. One objection stated that our building is falling into disrepute. Well, I understand disrepute is that it's being held in low esteem by the public, and I don't think that's evidenced by the outcomes we have every day at our property. It's not supported by our loyal customers, and it's not supported by the 65% of positive submissions received. Approximately 8 objections seem to focus on a perceived lack of parking in the area. The matter of parking, as Mr Russell has just outlined, was dealt with by mediation through SAT during 2019. A result, an appropriate level of parking was agreed for all of the current activities and constructed with the exception of 2 car bays on Meadow Street, which are still signed as 5-minute bays. The change of these bays to unrestricted time formed a part of the SAT agreement. However, this change has been resisted by the City to date for reasons unclear to us and is possibly in breach of the SAT agreement. We are grateful that the City has made several improvements aimed at managing the parking in the area, including the placement of no parking signs on Stirling Street at the corner of Meadow. This is working well. We are of the view that there are a number of options available to further improve the management of parking on Stirling Street, which is shared between our business and the Rose and Crown on a de facto reciprocal basis. In our opinion, the management of parking to Stirling Street east of our business would be beneficial to local residents. Another public comment was a lengthy submission provided by the Guildford Association, which we believe included several inaccuracies. Namely, that no approval has been sought from the City. We have applied for approval.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
That there were 6 car bays on the site when the post office was trading. No regard has been paid to increase traffic. That the amendment is inconsistent with Planning Policy 17. That the City cedes its planning decisions to those that act first and ask later. I don't have time to address those individually. I think they stand for themselves. In order to correct the record of the association, I wrote to the Secretary on the 21st of January with an offer for me to attend a regular or special meeting of the association, which would have allowed me to provide detail to some of the association's statements in their submission. To date, although I understand the association held a meeting on the 15th of February, I have not had acceptance to my request, which, if it had been accepted, may have assisted the association to hopefully adopt a more informed position in keeping with their aims, which include to preserve and promote the historic nature of the place, of Guildford, sorry. That is our stated intention for our building. We are similar. We are puzzled our first application for the additional use of the garden centre did not seem to progress. We are encouraged with the officer's report to Council regarding this application, recommending the amendment be forwarded to the Honourable Minister for Planning with a request to grant approval to the amendment and for its gazettal without modification.
Thank you, Mr Newman. That's your 5 minutes. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you. Well, my question's very similar to the last one I asked, and that was, is it fair that some businesses in Guildford can basically circumvent like a proper planning process and applications and what have you, and set up a business and then go for planning approval after they've already set their businesses up?
Councillor Catalano, I thought I made it clear when I asked you...
No, it's a question I'm asking.
Well, I know that, but we're dealing with a scheme
No,
amendment.
and I'm asking basically, is it fair that this particular application that we have in front of us is one of those particular applications? So it's a very relevant question. Is it fair that a particular application like this one, which is basically...
Councillor Catalano, I'm going to stop you there. We can't expect Mr Noonan to answer that question. We have to deal with all applications, whether they are retrospective, and we have to take a retrospective application and treat it as a new application, whether the operation's been there for...
I understand the process, I understand what's happening, but I'm asking his opinion about whether that's going to be okay in Guildford from here on, because obviously we've had this quite a number of times, and is this what's going to happen in Guildford, and would you be happy with that?
Well, you can answer if you wish, Mr Noonan.
I mean, that's the question.
Well, I could only say, Councillor, that I am very happy with the relationship that we've had by approaching the city in the first place, before we settled on the property, by tabling plans, by being very enthusiastically received by the city, by making the application, by going through the process that I've just outlined, by getting feedback through the Heritage Council that our application is in the system and progressing. Now, I don't know about project management very much, but in the little world I live in, there's a customer, in my opinion this is the city, and there's a client, and that's me. I pay my money, I put my application in, that's my job done. What am I supposed to do? It's a long process. I think I've answered the question in my submission and just then.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr Noonan. My question, I've got two questions. One is, one of the questions or concerns raised is parking, but more so about the lack of a loading zone.
Yep.
Do you have any plans to accommodate for a loading zone to service the garden centre aspect of the business?
Yes, we have shown on a plan previously, which I do have a copy of here. I'm not sure if it's been formally submitted to the city, but in the mediation with SAT, we did designate a proposed loading bay on Stirling Street immediately in front of our office. That hasn't been, as I said, tabled formally, I don't believe, with the city.
Okay, thank you. And a second question, which is just sort of more curiosity than other, and from a business side of things. How does your business insurance operate if your business is operating outside of the allowable service in that?
Well, I can only answer we have full disclosure to our insurers, and we are fully insured.
Beautiful. So it doesn't affect your public liability or any of your building insurance when you're operating outside of the
I'm not a lawyer there, but I don't believe that's the case. We are completely insured.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your attendance, Mr Noonan, and for your deputation. Thank you. Councillors, I'll draw your attention. There is a written deputation against the staff recommendation for Mr Dan Richardson. Okay, we now move on to item 4.4, State Administrative Tribunal, reconsideration of refusal of a single house outside the building envelope in Litchfield Promenade, Jane Brook. It's on page 276 of your agenda, and we have in-person's deputation from Mr Sam Calabrese and his wife, Mrs Amy Calabrese, against the recommendation. Thank you, Mr Calabrese. You've got 5 minutes between you. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this deputation on behalf of my wife, Amy, and I, and please excuse the speed at which I'll have to read. In October last year, councillors voted overwhelmingly to reject this DA, a decision that our family remains very grateful for. At that meeting, we discussed how this proposal would severely impact the privacy and amenity of our family. I spoke about how Amy and I had done our due diligence research before buying our lot, studying the defined building envelopes that were featured prominently on advertising material, billboards in the Jane Brook area, the Jane Brook structure plan, and most importantly, the restrictive covenants provided by the estate developer. The minor amendments that have been proposed from a mediation meeting we were unfortunately not invited to participate in do not address our primary concerns. The estate planning never envisaged a driveway running along the boundary fence of our property, which would be parallel to our children's bedroom and private family areas. We are already familiar with the sound of car engines revving as they climb the incline to the proposed building location on the weekend to enjoy the views. The thought of hearing this noise every single day as cars enter and leave the large dwelling which is proposed honestly keeps Amy and I up at night. We wonder if we've made the most expensive mistake of our life by following the rules and building our home to comply with all of our contractual and planning requirements. If everybody could ignore the contracts they signed, disregard the restrictive covenants, the structure plan, the environmental referrals, we could have proposed building our house at the top of the hill, also seeking city views, and in doing so impinged on our neighbours' privacy and amenity. But we didn't. We followed the rules and complied with our contract. We designed our house to specifically have these important and private family areas face away from the defined building envelope of Lot 2160 for privacy and amenity. Amy and I do not usually seek to complain or seek council's intervention on matters. We try to be pragmatic and reasonable. However, this development application is not a reasonable proposal. It seeks to bypass contractual provisions and environmental measures in order to maximise city views, and in doing so, to the detriment of our family. It is not only our view that this proposal should not proceed, and also the overwhelming outcome of the last council meeting in October. The estate developer, DJ McCormack, informed the applicant following the meeting in October 2021 that after being made aware that the proposed development was outside the building envelope, they could not approve or support it. Unfortunately, the current submission before council, dated February 2022, still claims the proposed development has developer approval. To correct this statement, DJ McCormack have formally corresponded advising they do not approve the proposed development outside of the building envelope, as it's in breach of the restrictive covenant and provisions as seen here, along with a copy of the building envelopes from the sales contract that were willingly signed by the applicant upon purchase. The contractual provisions the applicant signed state dwellings and all ancillary structures must be constructed entirely within the designated building envelopes on the land. The agreed restrictive covenants state the buyer will not construct a residence or any ancillary structures or any they're part of except within the designated building envelope. As the estate developer has clarified, the proposal does not meet these conditions. It's also been highlighted that the defined building envelopes are not just arbitrary lines. They were carefully designed as part of the Environmental Protection, Biodiversity and Conservation Act referral as a proposed mitigation and environmental protection measure. To summarise, the proposed development will severely impact the amenity and privacy of my family, and the minor amendments proposed do not resolve these issues. The proposal ignores the contractual provisions and obligations that were willingly entered upon purchase, which state building cannot occur outside of the defined building envelopes. The development application has been rejected by the estate developer. 4 very significant habitat trees have already been cleared and the building envelope partially cleared by the developer to facilitate construction.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
The engineering requirements should have been known before the lot was purchased, and we and other residents had to incorporate very similar engineering challenges within our designs. We respectfully ask councillors to reject this application again. We would not object to an application to build in accordance with the restrictive covenants and the seller's contract within the vicinity of the building envelope, but this proposal does not do that. It proposes a very drastic change. We thank you again for the time listening to the deputation on behalf of my family. We've sent some information on the contracts that have been signed, the building envelopes and various other materials, but I'm happy to discuss that further if required.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Calabresi, a question. The original owner of the land, the subdivider, are they able to enforce the restrictive covenants about building envelopes?
The conversation I've had with the developer was that building outside was not permitted, and the legal advice that we sought back in October before the last council meeting was that these contractual provisions should be enforced.
Can you enforce them?
I'm not sure. We do need clarity, I think, from our lawyer as to whether or not the view was that council may not be able to approve the proposal because it is in conflict with the contractual provisions. As a party to the estate's restrictive covenant, we may have some legal recourse, but in the first instance we've contacted the developer who was required to provide approval to the city for this development, who stated they weren't given the information on the location of the building envelope when they'd originally approved, and since then they've rescinded and rejected the proposal.
Got question.
Further
for
question?
staff.
Yep. I'll just ask any more questions of Mr Calabrese. Councillor Parry.
Mr Calabrese, is it? Have you forwarded us the DJ McCormick letter as well? I may have sent it, but have you sent us a copy to all councillors in regards to their response?
Thank you, Councillor. The developer earlier today advised me that they'd provided written correspondence to the applicant. What they were able to provide me was a copy of the proposal with the note highlighted there, outside building envelope not approved and signed. In addition, they provided a copy of extracts from the seller's contract, which are part of the annexures and restrictive covenants, and they've just put there, it's been signed by the applicant as part of the contract in ensuring that he was aware of where the defined building envelopes were. And sorry, my wife Amy's just informed me she emailed copies of these two documents around to everyone this afternoon.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Mr Calabrese, the actual subdivision of the area, that was, I believe, subject to a federal environmental approval based on the preservation of the environment, in particular the trees and the like, and that is what set where they could have their building envelopes, I believe. Is that correct?
Sorry, thank you, Councillor. The original sub-development was submitted to the Commonwealth as part of the EPBC Act environmental referral. In the documentation, as part of the referral, which I've got here, and we did send extracts through to councillors this afternoon as well, the developer's referral discusses how they designed and decided on where the building envelopes would be. There were actually two referrals. I believe one was about 2010 and the final one dated 2016. In the 2016 version, the developers actually reduced the size of the building envelopes and made some minor amendments. And in doing so, they suggested that it was being done to find the right balance between construction feasibility and environmental protection measures. And as I quickly mentioned in my deputation, 4 significant foraging trees have already been cleared from that defined building envelope, in addition to clearing. So they were trying to seek what trees they could protect, what trees needed to be cleared to facilitate development. On lot 2160, 4 of those trees have already been knocked down.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson. Of staff, yes. Thank you for your attendance and your deputation tonight. Councillor Johnson, you have a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The question is always to the planning staff. So it looks like here we're dealing with an issue where we've got covenants to build inside a specific envelope that appear to be part of contract law, but also planning law is at play here. So I wonder if the staff could advise, are we here to enforce these contractual covenants, or are we here just to ensure that planning law is followed? And if it is planning law, is this something that we can actually enforce?
Mr Russell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In short, no, we have no power to enforce covenants, and neither should we or are we required to. Covenants imposed on estates by the original land developer are to the benefit of the land developer and are enforceable by the land developer, or potentially, and this is, I think Mr Calabrese has already indicated he might need to seek legal advice from his lawyer, can be enforced by another party, a beneficiary of that covenant. Council will recall the instance not that long ago in the same part of Jane Brook where a proponent advised that they had sent a letter by their solicitors to the applicant giving notice that they hadn't secured, or asking whether they had secured the approval of the estate covenant holders, and if they hadn't, they were intending to take legal action in the Supreme Court. Now again, We don't need to worry ourselves about the disposition of that. That is properly either for the estate covenant holders or any beneficiary such as Mr Calabresi, and it's for them to look at what their legal capacity is on that matter. We do not, and we are not obliged, and neither can we, or neither, Mr Mayor, should we or want to become the adjudicator of interests in land between private parties. And our approvals that are issued are very clear. This is an approval pursuant to the City of Swan Local Planning Scheme 17. It is not a catch-all approval that gives someone carte blanche to ignore or have approval pursuant to every other interest or legislation or regulatory approval requirement that might impact the land. And neither can it be that way.
Councillor Johnson, continue.
And just to focus on the planning aspect now, so these building envelopes, are they part of our planning scheme?
Through Mr Mayor, building envelopes are instruments imposed through a structure plan, and structure plans are, since 2015, are instruments of which due regard is to have. The planning regulations that came into 2015 were fairly explicit, and what they said is that structure plans and zones and reserves depicted on those are not to be taken as if they operate as zones of reserve pursuant to the scheme. So the powers of structure plans pursuant to local planning schemes have been watered down since 2015, and to be fair, this estate predated those regulations in 2015. But the state of the planning instrument is that as a development standard, an applicant may seek to vary a development standard such as a building envelope. They have a right to make an application, and that application needs to be determined by the decision maker, and there is a capacity for review such as we have here in the SAT. So, in short, yes, we can consider on the merits of an application whether or not to approve outside of a building envelope, even ones depicted on structure plans that have been approved and endorsed.
Councillor Henderson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr Russell. So you're saying to me that the application, which is effectively ultra vires in one domain, which might cost hundreds of thousands to defend, is legal in another domain?
I don't understand that, Mr Mayor. I've never used the term ultra vires at all.
Illegal then?
I've never said anything about illegal. Not
Okay. Did you want to rephrase your question, Councillor Henderson, or pursue it at a later
I
time?
think everyone understands. So effectively, you're saying that something that someone signed a document on to say that they'll stand by a covenant under common law, and then we have another set of law over here that says, well, we can approve it. I just don't get that.
I think the answer was that they can apply to vary it.
Yeah, of course, and that might cost them a lot of money.
Thank you. The next speaker on this item is Mr Jason Hunt from State West Planning on behalf of the owner, Mr Brett Jones. Thank you, Mr Hunt. Once you start speaking, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We're speaking in support of the officer's recommendation. I thought we'd just provide a little bit of background. When the current landowner prepared and lodged a development application, they were doing so to respond to poor site conditions or poor land capability of the existing building envelope. These were that the current location is in a gully and the focal point of pre and post development overland water flows. The soil conditions all through the area are clay, and these are highly reactive, especially when impacted through wetting and drying. The reactive action results in cracking of foundation, retaining and buildings. Building in locations that are subject to water pooling or inundation are not suitable. There has been provided an engineering report that outlines this. The current building envelope has a 20% grade and requires retaining through either cut and fill or a combination of both to get a level area. As is in the area, there's generally granite outcrops, which make excavation quite problematic. And also, if you undertake cut, you result in creating an area where water pools, which again, due to the reactive soils, is not good. Creating a building envelope in the current location will require significant retaining at the front of the house, possibly in the order of 6 to 9 metres, in close proximity to the neighbour and the street. This will require significant amounts of imported fill, and the outcome from this process will be an intensification of the overland flows concentrated towards the neighbour's house. The current setback from the existing road is approximately 20 metres, and due to changes in state planning policies, the current building envelope is not considered to achieve the most current requirements regarding separation from this road and also the future highway in regards to impacts of noise, pollution, and getting a greater setback reduces these impacts significantly. The current City of Swan building envelope policy also is not complied with in regards to achieving the minimum setback distance. Is not located in a location that has the least vegetation and minimises clearing, and it has a slope exceeding 20 degrees. There are sections within the building envelope that are up to 27 degrees over a 10-metre length. The proposed location as lodged for the single dwelling outside the building envelope responds positively to all these issues, and that's what drove the landowner's desired change. This was considered by the council, and the officer's recommendation for approval wasn't supported. At the on-site mediation, discussion occurred to identify the key issues raised by the council, and these have been incorporated into the changes made to the application that is now being asked to be considered by the council. At the deputation, the understanding from the concerns of the neighbour at lot 2161 were that they could be summarised in the following: that there was dust and noise from the proposed driveway, headlights from cars, privacy for kids' living spaces and amenity. The plans have been amended to respond to all these concerns raised from the consultation and from previous matters raised at the council meeting. These changes are shown on the plan, but do include that the driveway will be sealed to respond to the dust and noise issues. The driveway will be realigned to allow screening vegetation to be planted on the boundary to provide both visual privacy, which has been raised by the neighbour. There will also be a combination of this vegetation and all the retained vegetation, which will enhance the rural amenity. The location of the driveway, garage and turnaround area have been amended to ensure the headlights of vehicles are not directed towards the neighbour's dwelling. Separation, as noted in the officer's report, is approximately the same from the existing building envelope to this new location. We have also prepared a landscape plan. The intent of this landscape plan is to provide dense evergreen visual screen between the dwellings, especially in response to the concerns of visual privacy for the kids' rooms and headlights. The location of the screening vegetation is shown on the landscaping plan, but involves the planting of 8 cottonwood hibiscus. These will be planted at a minimum 4 metre centres to ensure a dense screening. There'll be 90 litres at the time of planting, so approximately 2 metres tall.
Yeah, and 1 minute left, thank you.
And irrigation is on site so that they can be done and taken care of prior to the issue of a building licence. In regards to the visual amenity of the neighbour's dwelling, we believe we have been addressed with the additional landscaping screening. The proposed dwelling has no windows facing the living areas, so it will be orientated away from there. There is also a significant difference in the height of the buildings. The neighbour's property has been built up 4 metres and the ground floor is above the proposed roof line of this dwelling. They will need to look down in order to see it, and the screening vegetation will protect this. The dwellings are a significant distance apart, and combined with the fall of the land means that they overlook this place. Structure plans are deemed due regard documents, and there's been significant precedent in both the locality and the City of Swan for these to be changed. The structure plan document indicates that the building envelope can be amended with support from the council. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. That's 5 minutes. Councillor Parry first.
I've got a very quick question, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. How many engineering solutions were provided by the applicant by yourselves within the building envelope?
Sorry, with the mask, I didn't quite hear the question.
Sorry about that. How many engineering solutions were provided by the applicant by yourselves within the building envelope rather than this alternative design?
The engineering solutions which were run through was the requirement to achieve a level is a 6 to 9 metre retaining wall and the fill that's put behind that. And the problems with that is that you still got, the fundamental problem with it is it's in a gully, and it's the point the water concentrates through on the site. It flows straight through the building envelope. Okay, so there's a concentration with when you prepare building envelopes, and as a result of that, this is the low point and the gully point where it naturally flows, overland flows that occur just due to the slope of the land, and that in order to respond to that, you would need to do this significant amount of fill, and as a result of that, you will then have to concentrate the water down, which is then going to direct it down into the neighbour's place. This is just not the right land capability location for it. When things were often considered in regards to building envelopes, and there's been talk about removal of vegetation in areas and things like that, that is a factor that does get considered. What this further investigation and reviewing the best place to build on this lot has shown is that this is a point where you concentrate water flows, and it's not a spot where you should be seeking to have items that are going to be severely impacted through the reactive soils that are at the location. That's covered in the letter from the engineer.
Sorry, follow up if you don't mind.
Yes.
So the building envelopes that was provided on your applicant's drawing, was that known by the applicant when he purchased the land, or was that further advice provided by him? And if so, did DJ McCormack inform him within the contract as well?
Sorry, just so that I'm getting the question, because this might be the owner's here, so I might just get him to...
So the very simple question is, did the owner know that that would be a not applicable place for doing a building envelope for that building, for his residential area? Would it be reasonable to expect that?
That the one that was shown on the plan at the time of purchase wasn't a reasonable spot to build?
Correct.
Did DJ McCormack tell him that that wasn't a reasonable spot to build, or is that...
I think that's a reasonable question, because the fact that, you know, if you're saying it's not a suitable build, right, but then it's been chosen as a building envelope by planning or engineers, was your applicant aware of that beforehand?
The location for the building envelope was determined through the subdivision process, and then you're saying that at that time, did an engineer have input into the location of the building envelope? So you wanted me to speculate what happened at the time of the subdivision?
I just want to know if you knew any other, like I said, were there any engineering solutions, or was the building envelope decided by an engineer by DJ McCormack? That was the question.
In terms of that, I'm not sure. Planning staff might be able to answer that question. The planning... the location of the building envelope is something that would have been determined through the clearance of the subdivision conditions.
Councillor Howlett, you are next.
Thank you. Jason, in your deputation you said that the 20-metre setback was no longer suitable due to the future highway. Is that Eastlink that you're relating to?
Yeah, since this structure plan was originally done, and since the subdivision was applied for and approval granted, there's been changes in state planning policies in regards to noise impacts and items like that. There is a notification on the title that is identified that says it's in the vicinity of a transport area, but under the policies that are now out under State Planning Policy 5.4, obviously the greater separation that you can obtain from that source of noise, and that these guidelines and policies were released in 2019, and a further setback and an orientation that's further away reduces the impact for both noise, and then there's also reductions just in regards to the general amenity for people in that locality. So that's what I was discussing. So I'm happy to provide you with that policy if you'd like. Happy to send that around. But planning documents evolve as it goes, and in the same speculation whether this would be the ideal situation now, that's what we're saying is there's a better location.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. The trees you're planning to grow on the neighbour side, are cottonwood, I believe.
Yes, that's
Yep.
correct.
These aren't a local native tree, are they?
No, they're an Australian native tree.
Eastern states, and they grow very, very large, I believe.
Yes, the information that's been provided there says that it's 5 metres to 8 metres.
So
5 metres wide, 8 metres high.
Right, thank you. Has an assessment been undertaken as to the visual impact on the neighbouring property and any, as it grows, any impact across the boundary of the neighbouring property?
In regards to
the size of the trees and the number of trees?
With the size of the trees and whether they would hang over the neighbour's property? No, there hasn't, but they could be trimmed as other trees are if they were hanging over the fence.
Who would be responsible for that?
I think I'm not sure if it's the local law for it, but it would be the owner of with the trees, and they would need to trim those, or the neighbour, if they trim them, would be able to throw the branches back across. That's my understanding of the local laws. But I'm happy to take comment if that's not the situation this one.
Thank you.
Councillor Parry.
One last question. Did you complete any construction drawings on the building envelope for the applicant?
Did I complete
Did you or your organisation complete any construction drawings for the building on the proposed building envelope? Did it even get considered?
Sorry, no. This was brought originally to the council, and we became involved in this process after it was refused. They had looked at the location and, for the reasons that were outlined, indicated that it wasn't a suitable spot due to the difficulties that were there, and that there was a better spot, and that there was an ability for them to legally move and build in a different location within the scheme provisions, and that they had prepared that and lodged it.
So what evidence was provided to you in regards to that? Like what drawings, what specifications, what scope of work, what was provided to you in giving that conclusion that you provided just then?
That the other location is a better spot?
No, just the fact that you basically, well, that's part of the reason, but also, was there any consideration at the very start to build it on the building envelope? That's my first question. So you said you brought in late. Was there any consideration or documentation provided to yourself in regards to there was consideration previously by the previous applicant or previous company in regards to that that building envelope was not even considered, or was considered at that point in time, then it was chosen afterwards?
Sorry, I'm not sure I'm getting the question, so hopefully I'm answering it. A review was done of the building envelope and the challenges that were there in regards to building in that location, and that there was a provision and an ability to apply to build outside the building envelope, and so that was done because it is a better site conditions. It's a better land capability location for a dwelling.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Catalano.
Well, just following on from that then, so when was the review done? I mean, obviously the owner purchased the block with the building envelope.
Yes.
I don't know what year that was. Got any idea?
I'll just ask, what year did you buy it? 2019 was the answer.
2019. And when was this review of the building block undertaken and all these other things determined from that? When was that review undertaken?
Yeah, the review, that was... Yeah. Is that okay? Sorry, Mr Mayor.
Yes, if he can provide the answers asked, I'm happy for him to answer.
So when I first went to go purchase the land, I actually came and met with the city first off before I bought the land. And I sat down with them and I said, this is what the developer's done with the building envelope. And I said to them, I think it's going to be a problem. The land sloped at 30 degrees. I'm going to have all these issues with water, drainage, the reactive soils, the clays and stuff. So I sat down with them and I said, is it possible to move the building envelope? And then I said, has it been done before? And they said, yes, it's possible. You have to go through council. And then they actually showed me the other properties, or they said, look at all the other properties in the area. So I actually did an overlay in my original submission that showed all the other properties in that same rural landscape zone that have all been moved. So, and then I've also got the DAs for all those applications too, which they've either been approved by you guys by a vote or by a delegated authority. So it's not anything new, it's not anything unprecedented, and it's something that I looked at before I even bought the property. And it's in your own policies. So in your own City of Swan policies for building envelopes, it shouldn't be located in a place where the slope is greater than 20%. So
sorry, what was that? I just missed that bit.
Sorry, in your policies, so I think it's policy 80 for building envelopes, you shouldn't have a building envelope on a slope that's more than 20%. It shouldn't be approved. So I already knew that there was precedent in your own policies for me to actually relocate it, and I thought that was the best outcome for me. So I made the choice to buy the property knowing that there was another spot that was better for all those reasons that Jason just said. So in terms of noise, amenity, the drainage, all the earthworks and stuff, all the vegetation that I don't have to clear. So I made those choices knowing that there's a precedent set in the area and it's been approved before.
Okay, so staff advised you that? City of Swan staff advised you that way?
Yeah.
Okay. So then the other question is then, what was your take on the contract that you signed to accept that building envelope with the property? I don't know who actually sold it to you.
If you read the full, if you read the full sentence, it would say you're not allowed to build outside the building envelope without prior approval from the city. So there's nothing that says you can't do it. It just says you need approval to do it. And then the second thing is, it doesn't say you can't move the building envelope. So everywhere else in every other council, you can move the building envelope, and then once you move the building envelope, you just build everything inside the building envelope. Phil might have some comments on this, but the City of Swan does it slightly differently.
Can I just ask you then, does your contract stipulate that actually you can move the building envelope with the approval of the local authority? It actually says that in your contract.
I don't know if it says it
exact
wording, but it doesn't say I can't move it.
No, but does it say that you can?
I think it would be.
Well, that's a proper question
because
I'm asking.
It's happened in all the other properties.
I don't.
So,
I need to have something more
I can send you the DAs for my neighbour. So my neighbour to the west, he's moved his property outside the building envelope, so I can send you those DAs and you have access to them.
No. So, what I suppose I need to know is whether your contract allows you, whether it says, fine to move the building envelope or the building outside the envelope. If you make an application to the City of Swan or any local government authority.
I believe it does say that.
I know,
I can send it to you.
I know you believe it, but I'm actually asking for concrete evidence about that. That's what I'm asking you to provide me with that.
Yeah, I can give you the contract. The contract doesn't say that, but the guidelines.
No, well.
So when I bought the annexures have all the guidelines.
Which guidelines are we talking about?
Well, perhaps if you could forward a copy of the contract to interested councillors, and they can read it for themselves.
Yeah, and also the guidelines, because I don't know what guidelines you're referring to, sorry.
For the Highland Ridge guidelines. So
yeah, okay. If you could send me all your information that you are relying on, that gives you this potential to build outside of your building envelope. If you can actually send me some of that evidence, then I can look at it, because without it, it's just something that you just, supposing. I mean, I need to know if you can.
I can send you that.
And, if your contract gives the City of Swan the power to do that, then we can make that decision knowing full well that we're not cutting across any other, obligations that you've entered into with your contract. I think that's the whole point of what we've been trying to get to tonight.
I think Councillor Johnson's question earlier was answered, and obviously if it wasn't able to be changed, Councillor Catalano, it wouldn't be before us tonight, and it wouldn't have been as that.
So one thing though, I mean, is it this council that varies that condition, because we're talking about a private agreement, or is that variation have to be done in another authority?
I'll ask Mr Russell to comment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I feel obliged to make this clear to the council. Please note you're on a reconsideration by the SAT. It troubles me, and I must put this very strongly, please do not misdirect yourself in the exercise of your discretion on the planning matter by troubling yourselves erroneously with the nature of any commercial arrangements between the proponent and the people they bought their land of. Whatever is said on covenants that were imposed on the land by parties other than the City of Swan cannot impair the City of Swan from the exercise of planning discretion pursuant to its local planning scheme. And the SAT would be at pains to make that clear to the Council if it was here or could. So I only suggest this: you have the power. You have the power to vary it, and you must consider the planning issues in front of you. And please do not misdirect yourself around non-relevant contractual arrangements between third parties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, you are next.
Thank you, and noted Mr. Russell's response. However, Mr. Jones, you did make a statement earlier that I think you said all of the properties in the area had been moved outside of the envelope.
Not all of them, most of them, so over 50%.
So now it's 50% of them?
What's probably easier is if we just the plan. There is a plan showing which ones have moved outside the building envelope.
Yeah, I've seen it,
and that's been provided.
Yeah, Mr. Jones I heard him say all.
Sorry, if I misspoke, then I can correct it. It's most of the properties.
Yeah, thank you, because I think some have just been moved a little bit off the edge or whatever, but we're talking about right out. So I want to be clear. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Johnson, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is just a simple question for staff. Do we have a policy 80 on building envelopes that contains that statement that buildings should not be built on a slope greater than 20%?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, we do have a policy on building envelopes.
Yeah, got it, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Podovnik.
I just wanted to get some clarification. Based on what we've just heard, am I right in assuming now that the city staff encourages people to build beyond the building envelope in Jane Brook? Is this a common practice?
Thank you, Mr. Russell. If you can answer
Mayor,
that.
I can assure you, and every member of this council, that the city staff do not suggest that proponents do any particular thing. We merely advise on the facts of the matter. And that is, and I think you've heard that from the proponent, that it is open and there is discretion and there is a capacity for any landowners to seek to build outside of a building envelope and or vary a building envelope location. Staff do not suggest, Mr. Mayor, do this and it'll be sweet. Certainly not in the time I've been here under my management, Mr. Mayor.
Just one more question. Did you actually sit down with the applicant and show them all the properties that had building envelopes that didn't comply?
I never met with the proponent prior to them purchasing the land. My involvement with the proponent has only been in the course of this application coming to council, so the answer no, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your time and your deputation and answering those questions. Councillors, that takes us to the next item, which is item 4.5, to proposed demolition of existing dwelling, construction of two group dwellings, Chatham Road in Woodbridge. It's on page 315, and we have an in-person deputation from Mr. Aaron Carter. Thank you, Mr. Carter. If you can turn the microphone on by pushing the speak button, and once you start speaking, you can have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Cool. Good evening, guys. So yeah, I'm the actual owner and I'm the actual registered builder for the development as well. So obviously the Shire's recommended it. The Heritage Consultants recommended the project as well. So this is just almost formalities just to get your opinion and your recommendation as well for it. So just to give you a basic rundown of it. The house is built in 1946. There's a bit of contention around that, but 1946 is what we've got down. It's an asbestos house. We're not living in there now. We haven't been able to live in there since we got it. The engineers signed off that it's not habitable. Yeah, so that's basically a lowdown on the demolition side. Yeah, we're trying to build sustainable homes on there, 2 sustainable homes. So the one on the right-hand side will be built first, and that one there, I've just got the energy efficiency rating back on that one. That's coming in 8.7. So we're doing our bit there for the environment and trying to improve the building standards in terms of energy efficiency. Other than that, I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have as well regarding the project. So obviously, I've read the Woodbridge policy thoroughly before designing that with my designer. So yeah, I think it's up to you guys if you've got any questions there in regards to that.
Thank you. Councillor Knight, you're first.
Thank you. I think it's great what you're doing. The only concern I have is you've got a black roof on one of them. Can that be changed? Because I think we should try to get out of black.
No. So the right-hand side house, my ideal preference is Zincalume. But at the moment, with this market we're in, I can't actually get quotes of Zincalume because the price is fluctuating so much. So the right-hand side house was surf mist, and the left-hand side, just with the colour scheme, was basalt. But again, it's not really a concern to us what colour the roofs are, as long as they match our colour scheme. If that's something you guys want, it can be surf mist as well. So it's not too much of a concern. The left-hand side's basalt.
I think we should be trying to get away from dark colours and in areas like City of Swan. So yeah, if you could change that, that would be.
Yeah, but it's funny you say it because at first the Swan said they wanted to see if we could change the colour because they didn't like the surf mist. So yeah, but no, we're happy to change to surf mist on both if that's what you guys want.
Yeah, thanks. That's all I have.
Any other questions, councillors? Then thank you for your attendance and your deputation.
Cool, thank you.
The next item, council, is item 4.6, fencing and common boundary within the front setback area of Parkside Gardens in Balladura. It's on page 375 of your agenda, and we have an in-person deputation from Ms Vivi Canto. You here, Vivi? Or we're just getting a call in? There's no attendance, so we'll just note that there is a written deputation from Miss Yvonne Jobs against the recommendation, which takes us to the next item. Item 5.1, Lloyd Street Bridge Concept Design. It's on page 447 of your agenda, and we have 6 in-person deputations. I believe one might be by recording, and the first speaker on this item is Mr Jerry Hanson. Thank you, Jerry. If you come to the microphone, turn the microphone on by pushing the speak button and you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, Councillor, thanks for representing the business people in the Hazelmere area. I've been there now 7 years. We've got 150 people working there, supplying our building sites in the city. So I'm pretty familiar with the area. Not only that, I've been in the city, in the Swan Chamber of Commerce, of course, for 30 years. And we've been working on this project for 20 years, lobbying state and federal governments for the funding. And finally it's come through, and of course I read some of the comments on the bridge and the objections or whatever they are. And I've spent some time walking through the area, and I can't find any reason why you do any environmental or any damage at all, except for improving, of course, the traffic from Midland to the airport, helping tourism into the Swan Valley, having better access to the hospital, business people from our area, of course, accessing Midland more conveniently. And it's difficult to believe that if it was going to be held up. Of course, the main roads department have started on the intersection of Abernethy Road and Great Eastern Highway bypass. So we as business people in the Hazelmere area would definitely like to see that the bridge will be finished at the same time as the intersection, which could be in doubt. So I trust that the councillors here who really should represent the community and business totally support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Howlett. Sorry, Jerry, I've got a couple of questions.
Good evening, Jerry. Hello, thanks for coming. Thank you for your deputation. You've been lobbying for 20 years, you say, for this bridge. Could you explain to me how you see the bridge benefiting business?
Well, enormously. If you really think about the airport and Midland, it's such a direct route via Grogan Road and Amenethi Road. So it's a big tourist improvement. Also, of course, the traffic. At the moment, we have to travel with all our trucks over that busy little Stirling Crescent onto Gradiston Highway. It'd be much better if we can take around the new road, which has already been built by the City of Swan, largely, except for the intersection on Gradiston Highway. And so the access to Gradiston Highway from all of the transport companies, toll, all the people around us, and the heavy traffic would be so much better rather than be bottlenecked there in Stirling Crescent.
Oh, great. So I've got another question. So could you give me an example then of a transport journey that you see to be beneficial from your business point of view?
Well,
so
if we would move, never mind toll, etc.
Mm-hmm.
If you take 5-10 minutes of every truck during the year, I calculated once, would save us about $50,000-$60,000 just in time alone.
My question is the journey. So where might the journey start from? For example, your business, and where might the truck finish, utilising that Lloyd Street Bridge?
Well, our people, we have to go to Military Road, of course, and of course the Midland Redevelopment Authority developed the south side, of course, on the railway line and the hospital and everything else. All of that will benefit automatically by having access to Hazelmere and the airport. It's just a no-brainer.
So, no, I'm just talking about freight in particular. So, if, for example, your business is transporting trucks, you say it would benefit your business. So I'm wondering if you're going through Hazelmere, you're going to go up Lloyd Street over the bridge, then where do you go?
Oh, no, Gradiston Highway. Most of us will go through Gradiston Highway. But the access, when the new intersection is completed, it's a much easier traffic flow, obviously, to get onto Gradiston Highway than what it is now. The bridge doesn't necessarily directly improve it for us, but also, of course, I've been part of the Swan Chamber of Commerce, where we represent all businesses and especially tourism, etc. So the whole thing is a total.
Perfect. That's great. And so my last question really was about the businesses in Midland. Do you see that the increase in traffic, maybe in freight trucks, but maybe it's not really for freight? You see that this is being beneficial to the businesses in Midland?
Absolutely.
Another corridor. Okay, thank you. And can I just confirm, are you speaking tonight as Jerry Hanson or as a representative of the Swan Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I'm still the Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce, and I've worked for years with the people in Hazelmere actually too. And we were in Canberra on behalf of the Chamber, promoting the bridge, trying to get the funding, together with the City of Swan.
Yeah. So you're speaking tonight as a representative of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, both.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank
as
you,
a
Jerry.
business owner as well as a city, as well as the Chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your attendance tonight, Jerry. And the next speaker on the same item is Mr. Mike Maddich, President of the Swan Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Mike. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes also.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors and City of Swan Executive. My name is Michael Maddich. I'm a business owner in Midland, and tonight I'm here in my capacity as the chairperson for the Swan Chamber of Commerce. Look, I'm here to speak on behalf of the correspondence that I've received and comment on behalf of several of our members and local business and property owners, as well as consultants that represent investors from wider Perth that have contacted the Chamber by written mail, phone calls and face-to-face meetings. The majority of feedback I've received is that these members would like to see the bridge proceed as it is currently planned and for there to be no delays in the construction of the bridge. They believe the bridge to be imperative for the continued growth of their business and significant land holdings, current and future developments, ratepayers and the region as a whole. To quote one from one of the letters, without the Lloyd Street extension, there is limited freight access to Hazelmere and Midland, resulting in increased congestion on the roads. This is both inefficient and hazardous. The Lloyd Street extension will increase capacity on the roads and improve traffic flow, It will connect Midland directly to Hazelmere and other industrial areas, as well as the airport, improving accessibility for the working population and reducing travel time. It will create direct access to St John of God Hospital, a vital service that should be easily accessible to all, but most importantly to emergency vehicles who simply cannot afford to be slowed by severe traffic congestion in life or death situations. I've also had contact from a member today, which is Francesca Flynn from Evergreen Consulting, that is representing several Noongar families and businesses, say that she does not support the bridge in its current design and however would like to see the bridge proceed, but with a low impact design. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard, question?
Good evening, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thanks for coming in and giving a deputation. So is it possible for you to perhaps redact the names if you want to, but send that correspondence received through to the councillors to view?
Yes, look, providing the people who've sent the written correspondence, I'm okay to do that. I'm happy to circulate that.
That'd be wonderful. Did you perhaps recommend to any of them that they should email the councillors as well? Because that way, you know, we get everyone's opinion.
I haven't, no. I'm just responding to the information I've received.
Yeah, perhaps as a response to them, you could suggest that they email all the councillors, because we're the ones making the decision, so
Sure.
it would be beneficial to.
Well, look, they send it
that.
to us to speak on their behalf.
Okay, that's fine. So have you actively surveyed any of your members in the Swan Chamber of Commerce?
No, actually, this predominantly is unsolicited. This is people contacting us to comment to comment on their viewpoint on that.
And so I would imagine that if you're speaking on behalf of the Swan Chamber of Commerce this evening, you could actively say that the Swan Chamber of Commerce is in support of the current concept design for the bridge.
So,
or is it just the bridge in total?
Look. So, pre my involvement with the Swan Chamber of Commerce, I am aware that the Swan Chamber has been actively lobbying to see this bridge come about, and Jerry Hansen, who was the former president of the chamber, has even worked with Hazelmere Business Association to try and push that through. So, as a whole, we are a collective of individuals. So I can only respond to the people that have actually asked us and commented about the position they want to put forward.
So if it is we're meeting. This agenda item is about the actual concept design as we have it now.
Sure.
Does the chamber have a comment on the concept design? Are you supportive of the current concept design, or would you support a redesign to accommodate the concerns of traditional owners and/or community?
Look, I think the majority of the correspondence we've received is that the support is for the current design and for it to proceed as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Thanks. So just wondering how many of these written submissions you had?
Okay. I look, from the top of my head, there's probably about 6 to 8 written submissions.
Okay.
There's probably been about 4 face-to-face conversations and probably a couple of phone calls.
All right. And just wondering, how many of these submissions are made from people who actually don't live in the area, or, you know, that kind of have sort of... don't have a vested interest in the area in terms of its environmental qualities, I guess.
Look, the majority of the correspondence I've received has been from people who I believe live in the area, and I don't necessarily know that. However, the majority are from landowners and business owners who operate in that area.
Any other questions? And thank you for your attendance tonight, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next speaker is Mr. Kevin Bailey, also from the Swan Chamber of Commerce and from the Eastern Corridor Opportunities Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors, and good to see you all again. And just to highlight that committee is a subcommittee of the Swan Chamber, also a business owner in the City of Swan. So, councillors, by way of history, just want to remind you where this has gone over the last 30 years. And it got to a point in 2011-12 where significant funds were allocated by other levels of government to construct the Lloyd Street Bridge. A correct decision was subsequently made to redirect those funds to fund the underpass to accommodate for the growth in St John's Hospital and the business in that area. And subsequently, the Lloyd Street Bridge went back on to the city's advocacy list. And this council has always endorsed that advocacy list. Councillors, I need to remind you that there's been a lot of talk about creating a race issue on this project, but I need to remind you that Minister Wyatt, the Minister for Aboriginal Australians, clearly endorsed this project and was key in gaining funding for the project to go forward. So make no mistake, he personally supports this project. He personally attended the turning of the sod with Minister Saffioti and our Mayor in November. Now, some say that Minister Wyatt requested Mayor Lucas to amend his comments regarding funding, and this may be true. And Mayor Lucas did or may have confused Lloyd Street funding with the Margaret Kitson Recreation Centre at Ellenbrook. Forgivable given the pressures of the job. But also I need to remind you or inform you that the fake news army will want you to believe that funding for this project will be available for other projects within the city. Well, that truly is fake news. If you do not build this bridge now, you will lose the money. The funding will likely be reallocated to the eastern states, and once again, the people of Midland will miss out, and the residents of Hazelmere and Guildford will forever suffer trucks rumbling down suburban streets. There is no ability to reallocate this funding to other projects in the city. The message is simple: use it or lose it. Now, don't get me wrong, the city, the ministers and the vast majority of people in our community are not aggrieved by any particular design of the bridge. They are concerned that cause-driven populist politics may prevent any bridge being built. But the decision you make could undermine 30 years of hard work. What you do next Wednesday will not only look a gift horse in the mouth, but certainly give it a decent slap. Councillors, how often have you heard a state government agree to cover the shortfall in a project where the cost overruns will run into millions in a market so hot that contractors are hard to get, let alone to get them to meet targets? It is unheard of, and you should not let this opportunity pass. Councillors, if you have not read this document, I clearly urge you to do so. It addresses a wide range of issues from environmental, construction, and it clearly outlines the 10 principles of clearing. It will be an enlightening document if you have not already read it. My apologies there. Councillors, it is called, councillors, the Clearing Assessment Report, CPS, commissioned in 2020. It is a very good document. I am surprised you have not got it. Simple Google Lloyd Street Bridge and you'll find it. Councillors, if you choose to slap the gift horse next week, you will insult your community, definitely the state and federal government, and destine future ratepayers to funding this bridge should it ever be built. Councillors, I urge you to accept the officer's recommendation and endorse this concept design. Bearing in mind you will read it is only concept. There are multiple stages of design through 15, 20 to 85%. Leave the rest up to Main Roads. If you also want to write a letter to Main Roads and the Minister asking them to consider design options, we could support that.
You have 30 seconds left, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. But you need to endorse the concept plan and hand this project over so that industry, freight operators, residents, hospital patients, etc., can all have access to safe and accessible transport. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Richardson, I believe you were first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question for Mr Bailey. Mr Hanson and Mr Matic have already spoken for the Swan Chamber of Commerce. I'm just curious, what does this subcommittee, the Swan Chamber of Commerce and Eastern Corridor Opportunities Committee, represent within the Swan Chamber?
So ECO, as the acronym stands for, is to drive and encourage investment opportunities within the City of Swan.
And how many people are in this committee, and how often do they meet?
As yet, a meeting has not taken place, but the infrastructure is now put in place, and I believe that members of that committee will be appointed at the AGM next month.
So there is no committee yet with members?
No, I've been appointed by the board apparently, so there you go.
Okay. As yet, since this topic has become public, I have had numerous emails sent to me objecting to the bridge design. I've had 3 emails from objectors. I have had 0 emails from Swan Chamber of Commerce. Do you have any emails that you can forward that represent, or can you show a petition of Swan Chamber of Commerce or a number of people within the Swan Chamber of Commerce who actually are opposed to this?
Opposed?
Opposed.
As yet, I have not seen any emails opposed to the bridge. But I have seen several emails, a number of them that Mr Matic also spoke about, in support of the bridge.
Okay, thanks.
I might also point out that some of the emails I've received are not just from people that are Midland-centric. And I've got 1 or 2 from people as far away as Ellenbrook supporting the bridge that have read the report. So,
thank you. Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and welcome to the public gallery, Kev. Look, I heard you say towards the end you will support writing to the Minister to look at alternative concepts. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, look, as I spoke to during the presentation, you will read in the report, either in this report, where it's at concept stage. So there are steps along the way that's 15% design, 35% design, 85% design, where modification to any design, as we move forward, like with any project the city does, can be implemented. So if council wants to write to the Minister of Main Roads, go for it.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr Bailey. You talked about slapping a gift horse. You can just firstly rest assured that I don't slap animals at all, gift horses or not. So that won't be happening from me. So I understand...
I'm sure you've heard that saying before when it comes to gifts.
Oh, I have. I just don't know how appropriate it is in sort of 2022, but that's okay. So you're now a board member of the Swan Chamber of Commerce, which is great. Can I ask when you were appointed to the board? Or what date you were appointed? Was it October, November?
I don't know the exact date, but it was some months ago. Yeah.
All right, beautiful. Okay. So on a recent Facebook post related to the Lloyd Street Bridge, you called the council a jelly-legged council with misinformation that supports a leftist anti-everything agenda. And then in another post, similar, you said this council is drinking Midland Kool-Aid and is tethered to 18th century ideology. So can I confirm if those comments were the views of Kevin Bailey's or the comments of the Swan Chamber of Commerce that you're representing?
They are very clearly my views, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
Councillor Catalano.
Yeah, hi. Good to see you again. Trucks rumbling down suburban streets. What were you thinking about? Because I'd like to know what, which suburban streets, where the trucks are coming from, where they're going to. Just curious to know what was in your mind when you say that.
Trucks rumbling down suburban streets, Councillor. I don't know where they're going,
ones?
But I'm happy.
Which suburban streets?
Good to see the manners are still here, Mr Mayor. Any suburban street, Councillor. Now, what you also need to be aware with the unfortunate and probably ultimate closing of Robinson Road is going to exacerbate those problems for all of those light commercial vehicles that are running around town. So you've only got to travel around anywhere in Guildford, Hazelmere, Midland, you'll see those light trucks everywhere. So I can't give you routes where they go. I don't drive them, but they're there.
Oh, okay. So we don't know. Sorry, I just thought you might have particular suburban streets in mind. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, I've got a few views myself. That's why I'm canvassing your view, because I just find a little bit...
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Are we asking questions or are we actually...
Yeah, okay, it doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. The other thing I wanted to ask is, what was the name of the report that you had again? Sorry, I didn't catch it. It was too fast for me.
It is called, I'll do it very slowly for you. It's called the Clearing Assessment, Report CPS 818.
Clearing Assessment. What was the rest of it? Sorry?
If you like, councillors, I'll email it to you all tomorrow.
I can't see it from here, sorry, yeah. Okay, that'd be great. That'd be good, thanks. Cheers. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your attendance and your deputation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. You may ask your questions of staff. Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. I'm actually interested in the concept plan that's proposed in here, which is a lot of infill into the floodplain. Now, I've also seen tonight that, I've heard tonight that the design that we currently have has been influenced by the fact that there's a hell of a lot of infill that's sitting south of the river, and that there's the big pile of contaminated infill just opposite Bunnings, north of the river.
Water, is there any indication that it is contaminated?
Yes, there was actually.
There is,
yes.
And I think...
To what extent?
Sorry, Councillor Henderson. I think Councillor Johnson, if I can just try and assist Councillor Catalano, I think that was a question that came up earlier, and Mr Coaten responded that none of that fill is intended to be used in the bridge.
Correct, but
infill.
Also what came out tonight was that the design, the current design, has been influenced by the fact that these big stockpiles of the infill. So, you know...
Well, I'll just have
that
Mr.
came up tonight.
I'll just have Mr Coaten comment on that, and I don't think that was correct.
So I must apologise if I wasn't clear. My answer to Dr Stimpful was that the design has not been influenced by the stockpiles.
Not
so
been
apologies if that wasn't clear with the mask.
Oh, actually, I thought I heard something different to that. But we can check the recording, because I thought I heard that it was influenced by the infill.
I think that was the question put to Mr Coaten, and he said it was not.
Okay, all right. So, all right, well, we've already ascertained that the infill that's sitting down there isn't going to go now into the floodplain. So, just first question is, how many cubic metres of infill does this project require? You know, you don't have to be exact, but what's the ballpark figure for that?
If you can answer that now, Mr Coaten, you can.
Right, no, I'll take that on notice.
Okay, well, we have that in writing sometime this week before the decision's made.
Oh, I can't give a guarantee. I don't imagine there wouldn't be an exact amount, as the detailed design hasn't been completed, but I can do my best to get an estimate of it.
Okay, because obviously if it's going to require clean fill, this is going to be an expensive proposition, and I think we need to know just how expensive clean fill is going to... What kind of price clean fill is going to come at? Because I know it's not easy to find clean fill. So the things then is clean fill, where is it going to be sourced from? How much is it going to cost? And this may also have a consideration on the budget of the project. And that's something that we need to know about before we before we approve this concept phase. So, question then is, how much clean fill is needed?
Well, you've asked that question, and Mr Coaten's
correct.
taken it on notice.
The second question is, how much are we going to pay per cubic metre?
Well, that's
for clean
unknown
fill?
at this stage, Councillor Catalano.
Oh, well, what's the current market price for clean fill? What is the current market price for clean fill per cubic metre?
If you can answer that, you can do, Mr Coaten, or we can take it on
I'll
notice.
just actually clarify that the project the city has made its contribution already through a contribution in kind. So this is being done as part of the Great Eastern Highway Bypass Interchange project. So the city hasn't been asked for any additional funds, irrespective of any cost implications.
Oh, okay. So does that mean that, in fact, the state government has already agreed to pick up any extra costs?
At this stage, yes.
They've agreed to it?
Yes.
And we have that in writing, do we?
We do.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
What's your point of order, Councillor Bowman?
My understanding is our process is we listen to all deputations first before we ask questions of staff.
Well, it's been practice that once one deputy is finished, councillors can ask questions, but I do take it, and I'm happy to hear from the other deputations and then have questions to staff, if you're happy to agree with that, Councillor.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that. Yep.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next lot of deputations, and thank you, Councillor Bowman. The next speaker is Mr Simon Ashby, and you'll have 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr Ashby.
Good evening, everybody. I live in Woodbridge. I'm a local business owner, a consulting engineer. Spent 8 years responsible for a structural fatigue laboratory testing elements of bridges, including the Severn Bridge, Humber Bridge, Clifton Bridge and Westgate Bridge. Do councillors feel adequately informed to make a decision on the Lloyd Street concept design? There are 2 sets of drawings, one received by the City of Swan on the 21st of October, which were not included in the recommendation report, and those supplied with the recommendation report. Have councillors seen both of these sets? The first set of engineering drawings by Jacobs are, in the revision notes, 15% design, and the second set, interestingly, 85% design. These are the engineering drawings. The 15% design drawings include cross-sections of embankments and details of a steel bridge option, but these aren't included in the 85% design package. We were told that the embankments had been steepened to 1 to 3 to reduce the number of trees removed, but this is not reflected in either set of drawings. The landscape revegetation drawings, however, show 2 sets of gabion walls along the embankments, but these are not shown on the engineering drawings. The design, according to staff report, includes a single large culvert that provides a hydraulic connection. Details of this are not given in the 85% design drawings, but the 15% drawings have 2, rather than 1, 600 reinforced concrete box culverts, but level is not shown. These 2 culverts will amount to 0.6% of the embankment length across the floodplain, and undoubtedly the natural hydraulic performance will be changed with such a restriction. We understand that the initial design was for a multi-span bridge, as elsewhere on the Helena River, but with piers in the riverbed. This was not acceptable with the traditional owners because the piers penetrating the riverbed and to a lesser extent the floodplain. However, the proposed 85% embankment design shows 100 piles in the north abutment and a further 60 in the south abutment. Each of these piles penetrates the floodplain. Were the traditional owners informed of this, and have they accepted it? The traditional owners were coerced into making a decision on the spot without access to legal or technical expertise, and the large number of piles in the proposed design may change their already compromised position. Also, the traditional owners, in the addendum to the environmental report, requested protection to the billabong on the south side of the river, but the designs do not reflect this. What do we want in a concept design? Function, to safely and efficiently transfer traffic. The north-south industrial freight highway through the centre of Midland is not necessary when an existing bypass is already in place and being upgraded. Environmental, heritage and community consultation deficiencies have all been addressed many times by others.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
Value for money. Poor planning has put the bridge at the widest, most treed section of the river, only metres upstream from the original narrow, cleared river crossing point. What is the concept design? Is it 1 in 6 batters or 1 in 3? Gabion walls or not? Do the 15% design drawings still apply? Flood level should be shown and the extent of ground penetrations made clear. The multi-span bridge was Main Road's preferred option and said to be significantly cheaper with less engineering risk. This was presumably already at concept design stage to be presented as an option, so minimal cost would be involved in revisiting it. Of course, in collaboration with the traditional owners and in the spirit of the Reconciliation Action Plan. So, in conclusion, it would be negligent to accept the concept design without clarification as to what it actually is and to review other options.
Thank you, Mr Ashby. That's your 5 minutes. Any questions, councillors? No questions. I thank you for your deputation. What's your question? Thank you, Councillor Catalano.
When you had a look at these concept plans, did you is that what we were thinking, or had sort of been that you'd been? What I'm trying to say is that I'm talking about the batters. It seemed to be an awful lot of 1 in 6 batters still in the concept plan. I mean, is that what you had thought, or did you expect that?
I don't know what the concept plan is, what the concept design is, because of such contrary evidence. We've been verbally told about the Gabion walls. But
which one's the Gabion walls? That's the stepped ones, the stepped walls.
Yes, that's the stepped walls.
Yeah.
But they don't appear on the engineering drawings, which I would have thought would have been the design drawings.
Right. So you can't see them on the drawing. Because I've got to say I'm quite confused as well.
Yeah, that's why
I found it
hoping what I told
confusing.
you would help you make the decision.
Yes, okay, so you were confused about that. And all right.
Have you got another question,
Well,
Councillor?
I was going to ask you about. Have you got any idea how much infill is needed in this? Have you been able to work that out from the?
Obviously not, because you don't know the steepness of the batters or whether there are Gabion walls, so you can't even assess the volume of fill required.
Can't assess it. Okay, all right. So, what do you think would be the best way to proceed, like with this kind of bridge design, in terms of? Is this the best way to go ahead with approving this kind of bridge design, or
talk to the traditional owners again and see if they are willing to agree to a bridge on the similar to the others on the Helena River, which would be a multi-span bridge, which would retain the billabong. And, but personally, I would have no bridge at all. But that's contentious.
Any other questions, councillors?
And
thank you.
Would I like to add that I note that basically all the people supporting the thing were mainly concerned about the time frame. They didn't mind the design changes.
Thank you, Mr Ashby. Now, the next speaker will be via a recording, which will be played by Dr. Marilena Stimpfel. The speaker is Bella Brofo, and she's got a recording she'd like you to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing this unconventional deputation. I have transcribed what Bella Brofo has said in the recording, so you have a copy of it. Bella was part of 7 of the traditional owners that were engaged by Main Roads to give their opinion about this bridge coming, and what they thought their designs were. To clear again any misconception, the traditional owners did not want a bridge. They basically folded on to the pressure of Main Roads.
Well, I could ask you to play the recording.
Yeah,
you're
totally right. I just wanted to give some context. So if you don't hear, please read along.
My name's Bella Bropo. I'm a traditional owner of the metro area of Perth. I took part in a consultation for the extended Lloyd Street Bridge from Midland to Bushmead. That bridge is going to take place. For myself, I can't speak for the elders, but I feel that I wasn't told truthfully from Main Roads of the full extent of that bridge going from Lloyd Street over to the other side. For myself, I don't fully support it because of the significant area. You've got the Helena River there and also the floodplains, and what's on the floodplains is the ecosystem, plants, animals, and the history of the sacredness that flows from that river, and the impact if that bridge goes ahead. And I feel myself that that bridge shouldn't be an option to go there, or no bridge. If you don't make a lesser impact, take it somewhere else, or don't build it at all. And that's what I feel, that shouldn't go ahead. Thank you. I hope I said the right.
Okay.
That's Bella.
Thank you. Obviously, Bella's not here, so we can't ask any questions. So the next speaker on the same item is yourself, Dr. Mariana Stempfel, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to scrap this and give you some of the answers to this gentleman, and I will do that. The field is 100,000 cubic meters, based on the 1 in 6 barrels. The Main Roads told us that. These guys that came here had 10 emails that supported the go ahead with this design. We had over 800 signatures by people in the Swan City that said, give us a better bridge. We had over 13,000 engagements on our Facebook page. I went and checked on the Swan Chamber of Commerce Facebook page to see how many comments they have about the bridge, for or against. They have nothing, zero. Talk about engagement, talk about what the community says. Talk about tourism. Why don't you preserve that floodplain and use the Aboriginal heritage of that place to give tourism to the area? Tourism is not just about going up the Swan Valley and drink water. It's also immersing you in the oldest culture on earth. Everybody will be envious to have those people in their midst. But we consistently don't engage with them. We don't give them voice. We don't hear their concerns. We just totally abuse their culture. I just don't get it. I really don't. So tourism, you want to draw people to Midland? That's your winning card. Not wines and getting drunk and having good food up the Swan River, or maybe both, but also that floodplain. Can I have that map? Visual aid. This is a map that has been prepared by DBCA, I think. All those little purple, these are all significant sites where archaeological things were found in the floodplain where the bridge is going to be installed. This is one of the oldest storylines you have in the Swan area. This is a place to be used to showcase Midland. This is not a place to be trashed. This is not a place to put cow carcasses in it. This is not a place to put contaminated soil like it has been done in the past. It is time this floodplain and the Noongar people and your constituents that value heritage and environment are listened to. It's really time to move into the future. God, I'm so angry. Now, I go back to what I've written here. The officer recommendation, sorry, it should really be rejected. It has to be rejected because it continues to support the destruction of the Helena River. You're denying yourself a better future. You're denying yourself a lot of tourists with a lot of money that want to sit in the floodplain with traditional people, listening to their stories, their songs, their life, their culture. We want overlap. We want to overlap with their culture. You are going to waste an amazing opportunity. It doesn't matter that the bridge is only this tiny. That entire floodplain will lose its magic. And now I'll ask you a question, Councillor Zanino. If I were to dump a lot of sand around the outlook out at the Bells Rapid, even though it is not impacted, it's not going to be the same. It will be spoiled, and that's what we are going to do to that floodplain. We will ruin it forever and for everybody. So, yes, we are obsessed about this bridge, and there is a bridge up and north of that, and we are obsessed about this bridge because it's the wrong bridge for the wrong location. The fact that abuse has been done to that floodplain in the past doesn't excuse you to go ahead and do it again. You need to have the courage to do better. This is the last fully intact woodland, which is full of Noongar history and culture and spirituality. When you install that bridge, all will be lost. The traditional owners have written to you, they have spoken to you, you have heard them through the recording, they have been here in person. They are pleading to be heard. They are asked you to listen to them. We have had only 3 councillors, they were willing to talk to them. These are human people. They are
you have
suffering.
1 minute left, thank you.
One of the things I want to dispel is that the embankment was changed from 1 in 6 to 1 in 3 by Main Roads and the GCA, not because they were listening to us. DBCA asked Main Roads to change the design because DBCA doesn't like that design either. They wanted a bridge that didn't have infill, and Main Road said, sorry, we have Section 18, cannot touch it. Same excuse. Section 18 is about the process, and the works is not about the design. This was told to us by the executive director of the Department of Planning, Heritage and Land. I know I got it wrong. Yesterday we had a meeting with them. The traditional owners are sufficiently frustrated about the fact that we keep on saying they want this bridge and they approve this design. They are writing down statements about how those consultations in the floodplain happened. And those statements with their signature will have legal value. There was no fair process when they were asked to go there and accept destructive designs that will impact on their culture. They were not told that there are 160 pylons in it.
Thank you. That's your 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor, have you finished?
Yes, I'm famous.
Councillor Prodovnik, you were first.
Thank you for your deputation. I just wanted to ask and get a bit more information from you. You mentioned something about the DBCA and some issue there with Main Roads. Can you just elaborate on that, please, just to give us better understanding?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have engaged with the DBCA and the Swan River Trust about their position on this bridge. And what they told us is that their officers that evaluated the bridge design were not impressed with the conservation category wetland being infilled. They asked Main Roads if the design could be changed to one that had lesser impact. And Main Roads said that they couldn't go with any pylons because the traditional owners didn't want pylons in the rear. Now we learn we have 160 pylons hiding behind the embankment, but that's a secondary issue. So the best that they could negotiate with Main Roads was to change the slope of the embankment. If Section 18 approval, which again only refers to the actual disturbance, it doesn't have anything to do with what you do on top of it. You could have any design. So Main Road uses Section 18 as a catch-22 for everybody because they say the traditional owners support this design. If we change the design, we have to go back to Section 18. Now, Ben Harvey, I can't remember his name, but this guy from DPLH told us yesterday that the design does not have any impact on the approval of Section 18. Main Roads can put there any design, any bridge they want. The only thing they need to do...
I think you've answered the question.
Yeah, let me just finish, please.
Well, hurry up, please.
Yeah, the only what they need to do...
Well, I've asked that...
What they need to
answered
do...
the question, Councillor Catalano. There's more councillors wishing to ask questions, so she's just expanding. She's answered the question, so just finish off.
Thank you, Mayor.
And then we'll take the next question. Thank you.
What the Main Road needs to do if they change the design is to re-engage with the traditional owners, which is what we want them to do anyway, because the traditional owners have never been engaged in deciding and designing the bridge. They were brought into the floodplain to endorse a design already prepared by Main Roads.
Thank you. Next question. Councillor Johnson. Of staff, any more questions of staff? Councillor Knight, who's your question to? Thank you. If you can go first.
Marilyn, you've obviously consulted with the traditional owners. Can you just elaborate on the process that they went to when
on
they
the
consulted about
the consultation?
The bridge? Did they sign anything? Did they? What did it entail?
Okay, so I wish I had that piece of paper. So what happens is Main Roads brought them to the floodplain twice. One time to look at the Great Eastern Highway Bypass Interchange project, which entails the duplication of the bridge over the Roe Highway and the Lloyd Street Bridge. On that spot, they were shown engineering design, and they were told, this is what we are going to do for you. And the traditional owner said, can we go back to our offices, have consultations, discuss this in another place? And Main Road said, nope, you have to make your decisions here. This is and then they said, this is a lot of things to look at. Can we do it another day and come back and look at this more carefully? And they said, sorry, we just only have one day. It has to happen today. So the traditional owners at that consultations, and this is all in the reports. I'm not making this one up. The traditional owners provide their opinion. In terms of the Lloyd Street Bridge, they said they didn't want any bridge. This has been going on for 20 years. The fathers of the people on that floodplain in August 2020, 10 years ago, said they didn't want any bridge. Okay, so this has been going on for a while. So no bridge, we don't want the bridge, we don't want pylons in the river. That's basically what they said. On November 2020, they were brought back to the floodplain. And in that circumstances, again, they were shown engineering designs. They were given the two options with the fully infilled floodplain and the little span on the river. And they were told to choose between a steel design and a concrete design, and do you want a 1-in-6 or a 1-in-3 batters? Some of the people there complained, and they said, look, you always come to us with this design already prepared. Can we change them? And Main Road said, sorry, this project is a go-ahead, is fast track because of COVID. We know you don't want the design, you don't want a bridge. The bridge has to come, so which one do you want?
Thank you.
And that's how it went. And we can provide you with the reports, and you can read them for yourself. The traditional owners we have talked to, which are the ones in the floodplain, are appalled by how their views have been twisted and how their words are being used. And that's why they will write statements where they will say in their own words how they felt about the consultation process. And I can assure you, those words are not kind of the process.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you are next.
Thank you. So can you tell me a bit more about the pylons? These, because I honestly didn't know. How did you find out about and how many was there?
The engineer amongst us, where is he? Simon, he looked at the designs.
And how many pylons?
He said 100 on one side and 160 on the other one. And today, when we had our meeting, thank you, Jim, with Jim Cotton and his staff, we were told that they are 20 meters long, that they will be put into the floodplain, probably 200 mil across. Is that what we said, Jim?
Just to clarify, we'll get confirmation of those figures. It will be, I think it's actually 1.2 metres,
deep, okay.
Diameter, but we will get confirmation of the figures.
1.2 meters.
Meters diameter, and how many of them?
116 total. We didn't know. We just
116 pylons.
160.
160 pylons that are 1.5 metres.
1.2, I believe.
1.2 metres
across
in diameter.
Yeah. Just learned it today.
Did the elders know about this?
I don't know.
I was under the assumption that
maybe they did, but they were told.
The whole point about pylons was they didn't want pylons.
They didn't want the pylons in the river and in the floodplain.
Okay, and what are these pylons going to do?
I'm not an engineer, but I can probably they are used to key the ramps in place, because you cannot just put sand on a floodplain.
Like a skeleton or a framework.
Yeah, Jim probably can provide you more engineering details on that. I'm just like you, I'm not an engineer.
Yeah, okay. So with the Section 18 disturbance, so if I heard you right, that basically the Section 18 approval is about disturbing the site. It's not about what you do thereafter.
Correct.
Right.
And yesterday we had a meeting with Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, Principal Aid, and with the Executive Director of DPLH, and they told us so themselves.
Okay. So effectively they said to you that to change the bridge design, there wouldn't need to be another Section 18
Correct.
approval.
And that Main Roads can do
Right.
it. They can do whatever they want.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Councillor Howlett, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Marilena, so in the officer's report, it suggests that the changes in slope have been brought into the design as part of the community engagement undertaken by GCA, the Greater Connect Alliance. Is that your understanding?
No, it's not an understanding. It's a fact. I gave you a letter that Swan River Trust sent us through DBCA. That change was done as an outcome of the negotiation with DBCA and Main Roads. So it's not because, as advertised in the officer's report and as advertised on the information released by Greater Connect Alliance today as a coincidence, is not because the community asked for it, it's because the regulators told them they had to do it. And the regulators wanted them not to have any infill either, but they just fell in the trap of Section 18, as advertised by Main Roads. There are a lot of things Main Roads is not telling you, including the traffic that would go through that bridge.
Councillor Richardson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Marilyn. I've got a quick question. I'm quite interested in some of the background information you gave. I guess right from the beginning, I've always been interested in, we'd heard that I think City of Swan had consulted with traditional owners. You've highlighted, I think, that there were 2 meetings. Can you tell me maybe how many of those traditional owners were there in these groups at those 2 meetings?
And I think it was Main Roads.
That's correct.
Greater Connect.
I wanted
not
to
the City of
separate the
Swan.
two and ask how many meetings were with the City of Swan. Might have to ask that in a minute.
No meetings with the City of Swan. The consultation, it's not a consultation, is the session that they had with the traditional owners in association with the Lloyd Street Bridge and the Greater Eastern Bypass Interchange Project were led by Main Roads.
That was the first meeting? That was the first meeting?
Both 2 meetings. One was for the for the entire project.
Do you know how many people were at?
8. So 8 traditional owners the first time,
and, the second time?
7 the other time.
And were they the same individuals
Yes,
at both those meetings?
Same individuals.
So same core group, only 2 meetings, and I don't know how long those meetings were for. It was more...
it was several hours, maybe 4 or 5 hours in the field. These are elderly people in November and August in the floodplain made to decide what Main Roads could do with their cultural and heritage.
Okay, thanks.
And we have spoken to 5 of them.
And are those 8 people still involved in this process?
No, they have. Today I've spoken with Bella. She says that she hasn't heard from Main Roads since November 2020.
Those individuals, though, are they still connected then to this group, the 8?
This is just a group that SWALS just picks because they are connected to the country.
Okay. So and they were selected by Main Roads, or
SWAL. So what's the acronym? Please help me. Thank you. I'm bad with acronyms and names. Yes.
That's how they were selected. That's how those individuals are selected. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your attendance and your deputation.
Thank you for your questions and interest. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. It's almost 8:15, so we're going to have a 10-minute break as per our new normal practice.
Mr. Mayor,
we'll resume at 25 past. Thank you.
Question. I've got questions of staff on this subject, so we'll resume afterwards.
We can ask the questions when we come back. People need to go and have a comfort break. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Just before we go on to any further questions about the Lloyd Street Bridge issue, we have one more person in deputation which we will deal with, and then we'll come back to questions from councillors to staff. So the next item is the Baskerville Drainage Study. It's item 5.4. It's on page 478. Yes, we're going to come back to that so we can have Mr. Pisano present. and then allow him to go rather than having another half an hour of questions. Thanks, Councillor Henderson. So, Mr Pisano, if you can come up to the podium. Thank you. If you can push the speak button.
Okay, fine.
And you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff and public. I'm talking in relation to the item 5.1, which is the basketball drainage study. Now, first of all, my comments tonight do not, and I repeat, do not relate to the water from the Great Northern Highway upgrade of 2009-2010. But my comments do relate to the water flooding, the water and flooding coming from 1056 Great Northern Highway, also known as 34 Hadrill Road. The comments I make today are what I believe. I'll make that statement again. The comments I make today are what I believe. As I have already stated, I believe the basketball drainage study, BDS, is grossly inadequate and written to mislead the council. There is much and significant information missing that the city hold. Mayor Lucas, will you instruct the city to immediately provide the council with all the items on item 5, which I have detailed and is before you? If not, why not? In particular, the JDA report, the landfill confidential report of 2017 prepared by the city, the DR16 2019 mediated outcomes that were provided, all of these were provided to the then council or councils, whatever the case may have been. I remind you that we have a different council today. Mayor Lucas, you said you wanted a council with integrity. How can a council make a decision with integrity if council is not fully informed? And fully informed is the city's term of advising the council of all the information necessary to make an informed decision. I request that the Mayor, the CEO, the Deputy Mayor... sorry, I'll start again. I request the Mayor, the CEO, the Deputy CEO and the Council individually and or collectively defer item 5.4 until all the relevant information that I've listed is provided to Council. Further, that as I believe about 23,000 cubic metres of unapproved landfill on 1056 G&H is the root cause of the separable flooding of a number of properties neighbouring 1056. I request that item 5.4 and the 1056 G&H landfill investigation currently being investigated be combined as one item in the future. Why has the City and Council repeatedly failed to act appropriately on the numerous complaints of landfill deliveries to 1056 G&H and the resulting flooding over the past 8 years? Is the City vicariously liable? Is there corruption in the City? I believe that none of the options will resolve all of the issues. Hence why, again, I ask for an independent and transparent investigation by experts of both matters, and they are related. That's the landfill and the drainage and flooding. Finally, how can this BDS, the basketball drainage study, be issued to Council while I still await a response? Well, I await lots of responses to lots of complaints which across those 8 years have not been delivered, but in particular a complaint...
you have 1 minute left, thank you.
Item DSI, or reference DSI 703-9984, which is a letter from Mr. Leon van der Linde, given that unique work order number, DSI 703-9984, which is attached to letter dated 22nd of 12th, 2021, and also 16/11/2021 2021, where I am promised that that the city is preparing a response which will be forwarded to me once it is finalised. So it has been 4 months for that last complaint, and I still haven't had a reply. So how can this BDS study be even put to council when I'm still waiting a reply for a complaint that directly relates to that matter? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pisano. That's your 5 minutes. Could I request that you, if you haven't done so already, can you forward a copy of your deputation, because you quoted a lot of reports, a lot of letters, a lot of dates, a lot of job numbers, so I can pass that on to the substantive CEO so we can address all those issues. Thank you.
If I may comment on that, may I comment on that?
Well, I'm just asking if you've got a written deputation, if you can forward it so we can get all the information you've been talking about. That'd be greatly appreciated.
The city has got all of that information, and I have repeatedly asked for A, a work order, and B, a response. And when I repeatedly ask, I am put on the blacklist, on the feedback team. So please, the information is all with the city.
I've specifically heard you mention a date, I think in November of last year, when you made a complaint to the city, and you're still waiting a response to that. But earlier on in your deputation, you cited a lot of reports and other issues. All I'm asking, if you can provide the city or myself with a copy of your deputation, I can follow up the CEO and try and get that information for you.
That list that you're referring to of all the items is item 5 of my response to the city, which is in front of you right now.
Okay.
Right, but on your second item, I will directly email you, Mayor Lucas, with those details, and may I request a response from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, any questions? Councillor Henderson first.
Thank you, Mr. Pisano. You said during your deputation, is there corruption in the city?
I asked that question, correct?
You did, and I ask you, do you have any evidence of any corruption?
I may do. I may not.
Well, if you have any evidence, please provide it to me.
Well, I suggest that the council get all of the records I suggested they need in order to make an informed decision, and then the council can make their own decision as to whether there's corruption or not.
Well, just to remind you, Mr. Pisano, at the beginning of every meeting I ask people to be respectful. On the issue of corruption, if you believe anyone at the City of Swan or any person in the state of Western Australia is corrupt, please report them to the appropriate authority, being the CCC. That's all I can say. If you believe there's corruption going on, please report it to the correct authorities. Further questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Daniel, my understanding is that what you're saying is you don't want the any improvements to the drainage unless at the same time we're going to consider the fill issue on the property adjacent to your property. Is that right?
Yes, but if I can rephrase that for you or clarify that for you. Prior to 2013, there were no issues by any of the neighbours regarding water, except for the water from Great Northern Highway regarding the 2009-2010 upgrade, which is what I said up front, that this does not relate to the Great Northern Highway water. This BDS has combined the Great Northern Highway water and the water which is coming from 1056 Great Northern Highway, which is a direct result, in my opinion and many others' opinions, a direct result of the approximately 23,000 cubic metres of unapproved landfill across 6 acres. That landfill has been averaged at 1 metre across the nominal 6 acres. In places, it is to plus 2 metres or to higher than 2 metres in areas of unapproved landfill. And the allowable limit is 500 tonne without approvals and so forth. And we're talking 23,000 cubic metres is about 32,000 tonne. So we're talking multiple, not 10%, 20%, 30% extra of the 500 tonne that you are allowed. We're talking multiple times, and this has been going on for 8 years with numerous complaints to the city.
I think you've answered the question, Mr Pisano. And
Thank
as
you.
I said, if you forward all that information on. Councillor Johnson, you have a further question?
Just a further question. Given that you believe you have a drainage issue on your property as a result of the fill at 1056 Great Northern Highway, would it not be better to support the Baskerville drainage study recommendation, because then that would resolve the problem on your property?
No, because as I said, and just let me find my sentence, I believe that none of the options will resolve all of the issues. Hence why I again ask for an independent and transparent investigation by experts.
Any more questions, Councillor Johnson?
If I may add, the city does have an expert report by JDA Associates, Jim Davies and Associates, which they choose to ignore.
Thank you. Councillor Bowman, you're next.
Mr Mayor, my questions to staff, so if any other councillors got questions.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
Yeah, just in the background, it says these complaints are generally related to a dispute over discharge between private properties. So why is the city getting involved in private dispute? So that may not be a question for you, Mr Pisano, but
I'll wait for the city to respond, and then if I may respond, that'll be wonderful.
Mr Russell, can you assist?
Only in terms of a recap of history. I believe it was the words of the former CEO that made it quite plain to Mr Pisano, either in this chamber or via communications, exactly that. If he believed that he'd been civilly wronged by the owners of 1056 in action, then he should seek legal recourse against that. Those words to that effect, Mr Mayor, is what I believe was the end position communicated on.
May I reply to that?
Are you satisfied, Councillor Knight?
We've been asked, a $600,000 bill to repair this. If it's between neighbours, is it really fair for the city to?
Well, I think it's a very complex issue. It's been going on for a number of years. The position between Mr Pisano and his neighbour at 1056 is one issue, but there's other drainage issues, and that's why there's a number of options with a number of...
Yeah, if you could give me your take, that would be great. Thank you.
Don't quote me on the exact number, but the city has a policy that does not permit transfer of water across property boundaries. And I pointed that out to all and sundry, including CEO...
Mr Foley?
Foley at the time. Probably, certainly in writing, and I believe also, certainly verbally I should say, and I believe in writing at the time. So I request that the city go and review it, check its policies, and that's why the matter's here.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, you had a question?
Just to let you know, Mayor, I will be withdrawing this for a deferral such that new councillors and appropriate residents can all get together and get a handle on all the issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that, Councillor Henderson.
Councillor Henderson said he's going to withdraw this item. We'll put a motion up to withdraw it, to defer the item, so everyone can have the opportunity to get more information. I think that's in line with your request to have it deferred.
It's partly in line. I requested that it also be joined with the landfill investigation, which is current.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr Pisano? Then I thank you for your attendance tonight and your deputation.
Thank you
very much. Now I've got questions. Yes, and Councillor Bowman's first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to the staff. The issues with 1056, I understand that was a SAT mediation, am I correct?
Mr Russell?
Yes, 1056 is an old application. 1056
Can I ask you to turn your microphone on, thanks, Mr Russell, so people at home
I thought my booming voice might carry it, Mr Mayor, clearly not. Yes, Yes, the application for the extension to the restaurant at 1056 was subject of a development application before the city a couple of years ago. The decision of the council at the time was taken on review in the SAT. It was subject of mediation. It was in fact subject of 3 days of mediation with myself and the previous mayor. Mayor Bailey attended on behalf of the city with its solicitor and with respect to other landowners that were joined with their lawyers. And over 3 days of intense mediation, Mr Mayor, in the end there was a situation that was agreeable to the respondent city and the applicants, and it was represented to this council on a reconsideration, and this council in the end approved that development, Mr Mayor.
So, Mr Mayor, my next question is the outcomes of the mediation, have they all been undertaken?
Thank you, Mr Russell. If you can comment, I was going to make a comment, but I'll leave it for our planning staff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We have nothing before us at this time to suggest that the conditions of the approval that were issued by the council, we have nothing to suggest they have not been complied with. I would add this. In my observation, there is misunderstanding amongst parties, external parties, as to the mediation process and how that played out and what was understood or misunderstood by those parties, as an observation, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And if I can just try and clarify it in perhaps a more layman's point of view, certain conditions were put upon the applicant of 1056. He has not chosen to fulfil those obligations because he hasn't carried out with his development approvals that we agreed to. So he only had to do those responses ordered by the SAT if he went ahead with his development application. And I understand he has not done that. He has not developed his property further, so therefore he's not required to comply with the conditions that were imposed by the SAT.
Okay. Next question, Mr Mayor of Staff. Why would we not be looking at this issue of the fill before we did a drainage study? And again, taking on Councillor Knight's point, there's up to $615,000 there.
Mr Coaten?
The issues are separate. They are related, but they are separate. So the drainage study was undertaken as a direct result of a resolution of council through a notice of motion that a drainage study be undertaken. So the drainage study is specifically looking at the city, at the capacity of the city's drainage system to handle the flow. The issue with lot 1056 is a separate matter, separate but related. So the study was undertaken as a result of a resolution of council.
So, Mr Mayor, next question. So the fill, whether it is or isn't there on 1056, that doesn't impact the drainage in the area?
I can only speak from my personal observations. Personally, and although I'm not a hydrologist or an engineer, I believe that some fill on lot 1056 has contributed to flooding on Mr Pisano's property, which I've witnessed personally.
Okay. And Mr Mayor, final question. I haven't asked many tonight. You're
not done yet, Councillor.
Thank you.
Now I've forgotten my question. I'll have to come back.
If it's that easy, we'll interrupt you every time. Councillors, are there any other questions of staff on this matter? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. That with those two issues raised, for instance, infill without a permit, what can the city do about that particular issue if that was to happen anywhere? Just a general bit of advice about what happens if somebody puts infill in without permit.
Mr Russell, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, in response to any allegation that someone has done something unlawfully, in this instance hypothetically filled their land, we would, in the first instance, investigate, visit the site, and if we found sufficient evidence to establish that they had undertaken development unlawfully, then we would advise the proponent. There's two options. We generally present them with the notice for direction under Section 214 of the Planning Development Act. and that is to either reinstate the works or use of land, or cease the use of land, so stop what they have done and reinstate, or alternatively make application within a prescribed time frame to seek approval for that use of land or works. That's what we do in the first instance. If subsequently they didn't do that, and then we would make a judgment as to whether we in all instances have worked reasonably with the proponent and they have not shown a willingness to comply or endeavour to comply, i.e. if they were willfully ignored the city or said no, we're not going to do it, then we prepare a brief and we present to the CEO for authorisation to commence prosecution proceedings in the Magistrates' Court. That's the
Okay.
process.
What are the kind of penalties that the city can impose?
Well, the city doesn't levy penalties. A prosecution is a criminal prosecution for a breach of the scheme, and the penalties prescribed under the Planning and Development Act are open to a magistrate to apply to a party that's found in breach.
Okay. So the magistrate could order somebody to remove the infill. So it's just the magistrate's court.
No. The magistrate presides over a proceeding as to whether or not someone is guilty of a breach of the scheme.
Fine.
And if he or she finds that to be the case,
all right,
then of course they...
You're talking about a criminal... right, that's a criminal penalty. Fine. Okay.
They give a penalty and we proceed from there.
All right, fine. So that's the criminal side of it. But now getting back to the civil side of it is there's this illegal infill. How does that... How can the city enforce it, that land to be remediated generally?
Well,
yeah, I know. So let's just say you've proven that it's legal. What can the city do to enforce that piece of land, that landowner, to remediate it back to what it was? What can the city do?
Well, in the first instance, I haven't seen in my time where we've ever had to take something to the extent that someone's found guilty of something and then they haven't then complied. The first instance, you might say, they might be fined to oblivion by a magistrate to the point where they either decide, look, we can't afford to not comply, and they actually get to it and remediate or do the compliance. Or alternatively, I believe the city may have recourse to apply to a competent court to access the land, to undertake the works, and then seek to have the costs of reinstatement put back against the party in breach.
Okay. And what's the general kind of, what I suppose in this instance then, if there was to have been any infill found on that site that isn't lawful, was that, more than 6 years ago?
Sorry, was what more than 6 years ago?
The allegations of infill there.
I think, other parties can say...
What's the history of that?
I think it's fair to say, from my recollection of this, it's probably, these allegations probably go back at least 5 years. I think you've heard from Mr Pisano this evening who suggests that these issues arose sometime after 2013. So that's what he believes is the source of the time frame of these alleged fill problems. Certainly, the applications in relation to 1056 went to the SAT a couple of years ago, and then there was a couple of years before all of that. So there's at least, in my reckoning, at least some 4 years that this matter has been playing out.
Okay. And the allegations are so far unfounded? They haven't been investigated? They have been investigated? And now I'm talking about specifically about this.
No, Mr Mayor, it is not true to say they have not been subject to investigations. And Mr Pisano's own submission in front of you is saying there's been numerous actions undertaken by the city. So, no, that's not true. It has been investigated at various levels.
So what was the finding then?
Well, the recommendations, there's various reports there that might have made recommendations. I believe, councillors, that you have circulated to you this evening at the request of Councillor Kiley a copy of the aforementioned report by Jim Davies and Associate that was prepared as part of the SAT mediation in 1056 Great Northern Highway. So there are various allegations and opinions But it's true to say there has been no conclusive finding, because
No
a conclusive finding in this matter is a prosecution and a verdict for a breach of the scheme in the Magistrates' Court, and clearly we have not got that.
Okay, all right then. So just getting back then to the water, because there was a mention about some policy about water not being able to go across another person's property, and that somehow council had jurisdiction over that. So I wonder if you could point me in
It's
the...
not true, Mr Mayor, it's not true to say that there's a prohibition of water going across properties, because of course natural topography that pre-exists artificial cadastral boundaries imposed through land tenure and titles is what holds sway. What we are looking at is whether anyone undertakes any works, deliberate works, that may give rise to an issue of a drainage problem or the transportation of water across boundaries. The general rule of thumb in planning is post-development levels should not exceed pre-development levels. That is the rule of thumb in planning with respect to drainage or water flows. So if someone was to undertake to do some work where the nature of the volume of water that went across the boundaries was no more, or in fact less than, the amount of water that was going across the boundary pre-development, then that would be perfectly acceptable under the rule of thumb that I've just outlined.
Okay, in this particular case, has that the issue of water going across property from somebody's development, whether legal or not, has that been investigated? This issue of water going from one particular...
Well, I'm not in a position, because obviously the item in front of you is a drainage study. I'm not in a position, and I'm certainly not in a position to, in my own knowledge, to say that I've observed these issues of water flow across boundaries.
So it hasn't been investigated?
No, I didn't say that. I'm not... There has been staff that have been out there in multiple visits in response to allegations made by parties, including Mr Pisano, about drainage. But to date, there is nothing conclusive that has caused the administration to say there is a problem caused by Mr Glossop that requires action against him.
No finding.
The most recent state of play, Mr Mayor, is undertakings provided by the current CEO in response to Mr Pisano's allegations that we have said we will investigate.
And what was the outcome of that?
That we have not yet been able to undertake those investigations because they pertain to development on 1056 that is now the subject, or outside of the city's planning scheme and within the new Swan Valley Planning Scheme number 1 and the jurisdiction of the West Australian Planning Commission. And the letter that the CEO wrote to Mr Pisano effectively indicates that we need to liaise with the department staff around how we are able to proceed under the current laws with respect to an investigation of any development or breach of development on his land.
Okay, thanks. I've just got a few more on that. So this is, the drain itself is in private land, is actually
Mr Mayor, I'm sorry. Sorry to interrupt. One of the reasons I wanted deferral is so all this can be put on the table for everyone to read and understand.
No,
There's
that's
a
fine,
mountain of
Councillor.
information.
That's fine, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Catalano, we're here to gather information, and we all hear the question, we all hear the same answer at the same time, so please continue.
Great, thanks. I mean, you
Councillor
don't even
Catalano.
have to have it answered. If you're going to do the deferral, then it doesn't have to be answered tonight. But at least it's on the record, and so I don't have to repeat it, although if I have to, I will. So is the drain completely on private land? I mean, my assumption from having read the report is that it is, but I just wanted that confirmed. With the Lot 5 purchase, there's like this little section of Lot 5 that's going to be purchased. Is that going to be compulsory purchased? Because it appears the owner didn't want to sell?
Mr Curtin?
Yeah, so some of the drainage is on private land, some of it is obviously through the road as well. There is also a drainage reserve through there, but the actual drain doesn't align with that. So, yeah, it's quite a complex issue. But in terms of whether it would be compulsory acquisition or not, it's not intended to be compulsory acquisition. We would hope that if council adopt that option, that it could be done just through negotiation.
Would you say most of the drain is on private land?
In relation to this study, yes.
Yeah, okay. And once we start excavating this drain, are we going to have to keep excavating it like forever? Is it going to be our responsibility then?
Yes. Yes, we would need to be going in there and doing maintenance on a regular basis, and that's part of the reason for recommending that we sort out the land tenure issues, because at the moment some property owners don't allow us onto their land to do maintenance.
So do we currently have many private drains that we excavate at the ratepayer's expense?
It's not a private drain, it is a part of the city's drainage network. This is quite an unusual situation in that the drain doesn't actually align with the drainage reserve.
Okay, but is it common that we do this, that we maintain drains that's on private property?
It's probably not common, but it's not uncommon. So through the Swan Valley there would be a few situations like that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, councillors of staff? Yes.
For Mr. Coton, I just wanted to be sure that on page 491, where we talk about the other options of 415 and 615,000, does that include the estimated cost of like an easement, or just the cost of the job and the materials?
Well, if that would be the job and the materials, because if it's going along Hadrill Road and to Railway Crescent, then we wouldn't need it. It would be in the road reserve, or the it wouldn't be on private land.
No other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for attending once again, Mr. Pisano. Now we're going to go back to questions of staff on item 5.1, which is the Lloyd Street Bridge concept. That's on page 447. And Councillor Johnson, you were first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question, Mr. Mayor, to staff is do we have the Jacobs report, which I believe includes the traffic modelling that supports the bridge?
Mr. Coton.
No, we haven't received that yet.
Have we requested it?
Yes, we have.
Yes, the question is, as we requested it back in September, it's a puzzle that we don't have it. Is there any reason for that? How many times have we asked them for it?
Mr. Coton?
I believe we've asked twice in writing, and I believe I'm not 100% sure, but I believe the CEO and Mayor may have raised it in discussions as well. But we've asked at least twice in writing.
Okay. And with regards to the consultation with the traditional owners, given that the city is reorganising itself to improve its consultation with the community, would it be a reasonable thing for the city to take over the consultation with the traditional owners about what kind of bridge they want? I've no idea who would answer that, Mr. Mayor, but that's my question.
Well, I'll try and answer it, and I'll be as frank as I can. I believe all the deputations you've heard, particularly from traditional owners, that they don't want a bridge at all.
I think the purpose of consultation surely would be to draw out what their views are and to determine whether there is a bridge option that would satisfy them. I understand the statement they've made is they don't want any piles in the riverbed or the floodplain. So I'm just saying, without improved consultation capabilities, we've got a new executive manager in this area. Would it be better for the city to do this as we are now in a new era of consultation?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I think what we need to consider there is whose project it is at the stage when you do that consultation. If it's a main roads project, and we want to assist with the consultation at the time, it will be something that we'll have to negotiate with main roads and offer that service to them to assist.
The follow-on question from that: at the recent briefing, didn't Main Road tell us it was our project? So therefore, if it's our project, can we not do take over the consultation?
Mr. Cote?
It's the city owns the asset. It's a Main Roads project. Main Roads are managing the project, but it is a city bridge.
So we're in effect, we're the project board, so we control it. So we could say we would like to do take over the consultation. Could we do that? Have we got the capability?
I think at the end it's their project. They're the delivery agent of the project, and so that will be through negotiation. We won't be able to tell them to do that.
It could be done. We'd need to get their agreement. Clarify what I meant. We could do the consultation through city staff, but we would need to get the agreement of Main Roads to do that.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson first.
Thank you. Mr. Coton, Mayor. Mr. Simon Ashby made a fair bit of discussion out of the batter of the walls of the fill. And I really want to come down to page 458, section AA, and just ask Mr. Coton, is the purpose of the Gabion walls to create a 6-in-1 batter between the walls, but effectively overall create a 3-in-1 batter?
Yeah, that's correct. It's not. I mean, I'm not sure that it would be 3-in-1, but if you have a look at that, that bottom section AA, and that was what the Main Roads explained at the briefing to council. So the Gabion baskets, which are baskets with rocks in them, are used installed along there, essentially like as a form of retaining wall, and so that way the grade can essentially be steepened but still retain it at a 1 in 6, the actual surface level at a 1 in 6. So if you have a look at that cross section there, what we're seeing at the front is the Gabion walls, and in the background is what would be 1 in 6 of the natural ground level behind it. Okay. And that information, and that's the drawings there, the schematic design. So the intention would be that would be sort of further developed and incorporated into the design as the design progresses.
Thank you, Mr. Coton, and I'm not even a civil engineer.
Councillor Parry.
I've just got a quick question, Mr. Coton. I refer to page 488, which says, if it is possible to include the revised design in the GEHBA project, MRWA has advised that the city would be expected to fund the additional costs for the revised bridge. While these costs have been not accurately quantified, MRWA advised that this would be the tens of millions of dollars. Is that design in regards to the Helena Valley Alliance proposal, or is that other designs being contemplated, or what's the story there, Mr. Coton?
Yeah. And Main Roads haven't been able to give us an exact cost in details of the approximate cost, because it will depend on what the design modifications would be. But in discussions with them, they have indicated from their understanding of what the design that the Helena River Alliance want, from their understanding of the discussions with them, that the additional cost would be in the order of tens of millions of dollars.
Continue, Councillor Parry.
Follow up in regards to page 461.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Parry's asking a question.
I just want to clarify something. He gave us a page number. Councillor Parry gave us a page number, but we can't
448. It was on diligent anyway, Councillor.
448. Okay.
448.
I think you said 488. But...
Sorry, my apologies, Councillor. 448 must be the mask or my dyslexia. I understand that I refer to paragraph 5, which says, I understand that the budget for Lloyd Street Bridge is $40 million, and that this $11 million has already been spent by the city or other components of Lloyd Street. While the latest cost estimate for the bridge is significantly above the budget, the state government is committed to ensuring that this long-awaited bridge is built as part of the GEH bypass interchange project. and to ensure that there's sufficient funding for it. 461, paragraph 5. Come on, guys, keep up with the program. I know exactly where I'm at. Where are you guys? Come on, seriously.
Thank you, councillors. Okay. It's the...
So the question... So everyone...
Well, just hang on a second. It's the letter from the Transport Minister dated the 14th of December.
Well, that's what I'm going to ask next to Councillor Callahan. If you just let me have 2 minutes, that'd be great. Thank you. So the question is, if we keep to the concept design that is proposed right now, the City of Swan would not have to pay any additional funds to that. Is that correct, Mr Coden?
That is the advice that we've received from Main Roads, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
And, of course, if a different design requires a greater budget, could we just add that to the advocacy priority list and get the money from the federal government or the Commonwealth government?
You can, but there'll be no guarantee would be successful in obtaining any further money for a project that they've already committed $20 million to.
But they might give us the money.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that, but they
might give us the money.
Or they might and they might not. Councillor Parry.
Just one follow-up question as well, Mr Mayor, to Ms Leahy. How much is... It says tens of millions of dollars in the recommendation provided by the officers. How much is $20 million for individual ratepayers within the City of Swan? Can you give that context in regards to that, Ms Leahy?
If you can answer that, you can do so. You can take it on notice, but usually it's...
Can I ask another?
Well, hang on. We've got one question being asked. Generally, it works out, from my experience, about 1% per $1 million, so that'd be a 20% rate increase to cover that one project for $20 million. Councillor Catalano is next.
Well, on the converse to that, I'm going to ask a question. What is the cost to our children and our children's children to have an environment that we can't live in because there's no, there's no water, there's no trees, it's too hot to live in, and where we don't have all the natural assets that we have lived with and that we've come to expect? No, it's a question. What is the actual cost of that?
I don't think anyone can answer that question.
No, exactly, they can't. But I'm sure that $20 million over those, generations and generations would soon add up to $20 million.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, it's a question, but it's almost like a training exercise as well. So, say we get a new concept design and we discover it's going to cost, say, $100 million, just for a nice big round number. And then we go out and we go to advocacy and ask for money to fund that. And we don't get the money. What happens then? We go back to the original design. Do you understand? We're trying to train you into how this works, Councillor.
Well, I think the risk you run there, Councillor Johnson, is that the current design, the concept design, is included in the Great Eastern Highway bypass interchange contract. The state have said they'll fund it and take care of any overcost without any further cost to the City of Swan. If that project doesn't go ahead in the current contract, then the state government might say, well, we're not going to build it anymore. You can fund the whole bridge yourself. That's the risk you take. Councillor Howlett, you have a question?
I have a statement more so to the point.
Well, we're asking questions, thank you. Do you have a further question, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, so if the state government said they don't want to fund it, does that imply that they don't want the bridge?
Refer Councillor to page 461.
Okay, any other questions on item 5.1, councillors? No? Then just let me get my run sheet. In item C, there is nil. Item 6.3, councillors' questions with regard to any other items on the agenda. Are there any? Yes, thank you, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. Now, I've got to get all my notes together. All right. 2.2, the pesticide policy. The question is, or two questions. How much does the City of Swan spend on pesticides annually?
I'd have to take that on notice.
Thank you. And could you also then, would you be able to give me also the cost, how much it spends on herbicides as a component of that pesticide? So if you could do that. And what strategy does the city have for avoiding or reducing the use of pesticides, but specifically I have in mind herbicides?
Mr. Coaten?
Well, there are a range of alternate treatments that that are used, and as some of which I think are outlined in the report. In steam, manual removal, mechanical methods, solarisation and chemical, etc., have been trialled at different times. So there is a range of alternate methods that the city has trialled.
Yeah, okay. I was wondering why they're not spelt out more clearly in the policy. These alternative strategies for avoiding or reducing the use of pesticides, why isn't it in the policy? Because that means that, you know, okay. If you could just answer that first, thanks.
Well, there's no specific reason why it's not included in the policy, and if council wished to do so, it could be.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, I probably will withdraw that. Because the other thing I had, another question I had, is there's nothing in that policy either about people being able to opt out of, you know, herbicide spraying on their verges. In fact, there's not very much information at all, even in the report, about that. So that's another thing.
Perhaps if I could draw your attention to page 99.
Oh, 99.
Pesticides shall not be sprayed on verges of properties who are formally registered to be removed from the spray program.
I did read that.
Property owners, occupiers who remove themselves for the spray program are responsible for managing the unsprayed area. So
yeah, I did read that, but it's like, how do people opt out? You know, how does it happen? How do people get to opt out? Yeah. That's not clear in the...
Yeah, that would be... I mean, that's not the level of detail that would normally be included in a policy. That's in sort of underlying procedures and things like that.
All right. But in the actual policy itself, it doesn't mention opting out, does it?
Well, it doesn't use the words opt out, but I think it does cover it pretty clearly. Shall not be sprayed on verges of properties who are formally registered to be removed from the spray program, so I think that could be interpreted as opting out.
Okay, all right. Oh, well, anyway, I'm going to withdraw that one. And
Councillor Bowman's already withdrawn it.
Mr Mayor, if I may, when did Councillor Bowman withdraw that?
Well, I don't know when, but on the matrix in front of you, under 2.2, you'll see that his name is mentioned in the right-hand column.
I can see that, but
I don't know, Councillor.
Just draw your attention to an email I sent a number of days ago.
Mr Mayor, I can answer that. Along with all my questions that were submitted to governance, it was on Saturday at 6:41 p.m.
Okay, I'm going back to the run sheet. Confidential items, councillors. Anyone wants to talk about any of the confidential items? On the confidential items?
No. Did you want to do confidential first?
Well, I'm going off the run sheet, and then I'm going to refer to the matrix and go through every item.
Oh, sorry, I have to explain where you're going from.
From the run sheet.
In this document?
Oh, in there.
Okay, so no one wants to talk about any confidential items? Okay, now I'm going to go through the matrix, councillors. I'll go through every item. If you want to withdraw an item, you have a question, now's your opportunity to mention it. Item 13.8, Reconciliation Action Plan. 13.9, Club Signage and Sports Reserve, and we had minor wording. 13.10, Ward Boundary Review, we had minor wording amendment at the beginning. 13.11, Delegation of Tender Review Committee. 13.12, West Brook Water Supply. 2.1, Policy Review Procurement, and Councillor Bowman's given indication of an alternative or some sort of amendment.
A couple of issues on that I'll discuss with Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. 2.2, proposed use of pesticides, City of Swan. As I said, Councillor Bowman, Catalano and Henderson, and we'll get a check on who was in first. 4.1 is the Garden Centre, Stirling Street, Guildford. Councillor Howlett.
Yeah, I will have an amendment, I believe, on that, but I've got a question to staff about that. Should I do it now or later?
Yes, thanks.
Is it possible to add another condition, so condition 4, onto the details of the proposal?
Perhaps if you want to discuss that with Mr Russell during the week.
Okay, thank you.
And come up with an alternative. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I may have one on 4.1 as well, Mr Mayor, and I'll discuss that with Councillor Howlett.
That'll be fantastic. Item 4.2, Kingsford Town Centre Precinct Structure Plan. Do you want to ask them tonight or during the week? Okay, off you go.
When do we know when the train line is going to reach Bullsbrook? Is that the one we're talking about? You're talking about the Guildford one. We've moved.
No, we're talking about Kingsford Town Centre Precinct in Bullsbrook, and what train line are you talking about?
It was referred to in there about the area is going to be eventually, serviced by a train line. So I just wondered, like, when's that likely to happen?
Mr. Mayor, there's no indication of any of that.
No.
I think what I can say is that all the planning for main roads on the main roads, so on Tonkin Highway, provision has been made in that reserve for future.
Tonkin Highway, yeah, it's a long way away from.
Yes.
I'd say not in our lifetime.
No, right, that's exactly what I thought. So, what's the projected population for Bullsbrook once all this development is finished?
Mr. Mayor, I'm talking on the correction, but it's in the order of between 25 and 30,000.
25 to 30,000. Yep. Okay. What's the projected population for North Ellenbrook? Which I imagine is that the area south of the industrial area?
That's right. So the proposed North Ellenbrook would be about 8 to 10,000 lots, so that would be about the same, between 25
to 30,000 people. So that's 60,000 people all up. Okay. Now, I wondered about the transport infrastructure assessment for the school. Is it the TIA assessment? Oh, I'd have to go to that page. But basically, there needs to be a transport assessment to be able to satisfy the Education Department about the school and the distributor road, and because the school wants a distributor road and they want a couple of local roads on either side of the school, and there needs to be this transport study. So it's like, it seems to me that you're asking us to approve this structure plan when in fact there's so many outstanding issues.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Russell.
Thank you. I think we've got to be careful, Mr. Mayor, we don't erroneously conflate two separate issues. The main roads have made some requests for further updates to the traffic modelling based on their latest systems. So it's an update to the modelling, and they also indicated they wanted to see some firming up as to how they're going to implement this activity centre development and the intersection at the junction with Great Northern Highway. The Education Department, who I might, as the report says, didn't raise any opposition to the proposed siting of the primary school under the original structure plan, have now indicated that they're opposed to it because they've cited the fact that the development control guidelines, which is basically maybe a best practice guidelines for school siting, indicates that you shouldn't have a school with frontages to too many or certain types of higher order traffic volume roads. So that's what the Education Department has said. What we've said here is that this siting of the school is consistent with what has been shown in previous documents, but in any event, as the report says, the estimated volumes projected on the surrounding higher order roads are still way lower than what you would normally get and consistent with what you get at a busier lower order road. So that's our response to the matter of what the Education Department has said with respect to their reservations around siting on one of these higher order roads.
Okay, so there also was Watercorp was concerned about no wastewater pump station, site for a wastewater pump station. I mean, obviously we're talking big numbers of people. I mean, 30,000 people. There was also concern from, there was concern about the foreshore and wetland plan. That must be DBCA. There was the bushfire management plan. There was concern about that. And then Main Roads had a concern about the roundabout. And actually, I couldn't even find the location of this proposed roundabout. Do you think you could point me to where this roundabout is supposed to be?
Mr. Mayor, it might be easy for me to liaise with Councillor Catalano subsequent to this. I'm happy to do that. Let me just simply say this, that everything that's raised here, it's all noted in the report. And the recommendation we're saying is to modify the structure plan to take into account all of these requirements that these agencies have reasonably pointed out. So we're not saying to disregard what they're saying, we're in fact saying we agree. The structure plan, we say to you, to say to the Commission, ought to be modified in this regard. And Mr Mayor, for what it's worth, the proponent has advised us only yesterday that, I'll take it at face value, they've said they're happy with the nature of all the recommended modifications that we're saying should be made in terms of our recommendation to you. And that's actually addressing everything that's come out from these agencies, barring, of course, the position of the Education Department. But all the other agencies, the bushfire stuff, we concur. The water, we concur, designating that on the plan that there's a buffer area. All the other issues about a foreshore management plan for the Clydemonga Brook, and I would also add, importantly, that they, and this is what the best practice guidelines say, that they integrate into that plan some recognition of the Aboriginal cultural heritage of the brook, which is what the best practice design guidelines for these precincts say, and that's also been added in. So we feel that all of the agency responses have been accepted by staff and recommended to you as requested modifications to this plan that the Commission imposes.
Why are we being asked to approve it when it's not right? Why can't the changes be done before we approve it?
Well, actually, Mr Mayor, I'm not going to dob in the proponents, but the email from Mr Trefai said, and Mr Vanderlyn can concur this because they're on the same email, that said we're doing that stuff already.
Doing what stuff?
These very changes, which you might say is preemptive, they're actually already modifying.
Yeah, but why can't we know that they're changed and then we approve it? Why can't we?
It's up to the council.
Well,
maybe Mr Trefai might submit that before next week.
Okay, that's my alternative motion. Thank you for that.
So you'll be withdrawing that one.
Thank you.
Next item is 4.3, Allenbrook Town Centre Development, dwelling yield targets, and Councillor Bowman, you've got an alternative or an amendment on that one. 4.4, State Administrative Tribunal reconsideration of refusal of single house and building envelope, Litchfield Promenade, Jane Brook. Councillor Prodovnik, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I think so. I'll do a bit of work on it first, so I'll send something over.
Thank you. If you could liaise with staff. 4.5, proposed demolition of existing dwelling, construction of two group dwellings, Chatham Road, Woodbridge. 4.6, fencing and common boundary within front setback, Parkside Gardens, Belladura. 4.7, patio addition, asset protection zone in Rosebery Way, Bushmead. 4.8, extensions to showroom storage, Bonner Drive, Malaga. 4.9, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority, Councillor Henderson.
Yes, I'll be withdrawing just to add an extra section in the table that we see on 441 to include approvals that have been done under delegated authority by the WAPC.
Thank you. 5.1, Lloyd Street Bridge. We've got Councillor Johnson and Howard on that one. 5.2, Ellabrook Leisure Centre construction. Councillor Bowman, you've withdrawn that. 5.3, provision of place-based shade. Councillor Bowman again.
Can I ask some questions on that one?
You may.
With the recommendation, I just don't understand how the options fit into the recommendation on this one. Sorry. What is it that we're actually being recommended? Which one are the options? No, it's not. I want to hear it from Mr. Coaten.
Page 473 is the recommendation, Mr. Coaten, but there's a number of options on the pages before that. Option 3, this is the recommended option.
So the intention is to use shade initially.
Oh no, I get the. I can understand the language. I want to know which option.
Oh, the option.
Which option it is?
Option 3.
Option 3. Yeah, this is the recommended option.
So it's option 3.
Yeah.
It says this is the recommended option.
Where does it say that? Oh, yeah, I read that there, but it doesn't actually say that in the recommendation. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, that's the motion that we're voting on, isn't it? Correctly? I mean, we've got to vote on a motion, and the motion should really say option 3.
Okay, Baskerville drainage study. Councillor Henderson, you've withdrawn that.
Excuse me, Mayor. Were you going to withdraw that shade sale one for that amendment to the recommendation, to the motion? Thank you.
Councillor Bowman's already
all right.
withdrawn,
Okay,
but
thanks.
I'll put your name down as a
Thanks for that.
second, and you might want to collaborate. 5.5, road resurfacing, Arbour Drive, Ellenbrook.
I've got some questions.
Yes.
It seems that this road, I mean, I don't know it well or anything, but just from the report, it seems that it's being used as basically a bit of a rat run. So, and with more cars on it than supposed to be. So, I just wondered why we were actually, and I think Councillor Bowman might have asked the question, but why are we encouraging because a lot of people were asking for traffic calming.
Yeah, so that's what we're including in the recommendation, that the local area traffic management assessment be undertaken in this area in future. So the actual consultation was on the reconstruction with black asphalt versus red asphalt, but a lot of the comments that came back were around traffic management. So that has been included in the recommendation.
So when do you think that the traffic calming, when this study is going to be done? And it's a study for traffic calming.
Yeah, so it would probably be looked at being done. It could be done next financial year, and the outcomes incorporated into future budget.
Okay, thanks.
5.6, bollard installation, Stirling Square. 5.7, installation of Children's Crossing, Suffolk Street, Caversham. 6.1, list of accounts paid, December 2021. 6.2, financial management report ended December 2021. 6.3, list of accounts paid, January 2022. 6.4, financial management report. 6.5, budget adjustments. Yes?
They relate to the money that's being taken out of the budget for the Midland Library repairs. So basically there was, what, $500,000 was there? More than $500,000 for that budget? I wasn't really aware of the budget for that. Curious if you...
Yeah. That's what I believe the Councillor Bowman asked that question, and an answer was provided in relation to the reasons for that money being
I was
taken
going to
out.
ask how much was the original budget for the Midland Library to fix the roof? Oh,
Just waiting.
yeah, it's the adjustments, they're budget adjustments.
Do you want to take that on notice?
Okay, the next thing then is, I imagine it's something in the, it seems to be like $600,000, something like that, if you add up all those different amounts there, but there might be other amounts that I don't know anything about. But the thing is, are we going to be able to find that money next year for the library? I mean...
Yeah, it is included in the draft budget for next year.
For next year,
Yes.
okay, all right, okay. Thanks for that.
Do you have a question, Councillor Johnson? Change in basis valuation. Proposed new fee charge for Swan Valley gift cards. Question, Councillor Henderson.
Lots of questions from Councillor Bowman. Great, covered some of the issues I had, but my real question is, after 3 years, what happens with the funds?
Mr. Mayor, through you, I'll try to answer that. So how that works, these gift cards are provided by a private company. So the city buys it from that company. We charge $5 to do that. You buy the voucher, put $200 on the voucher. If you don't spend the $200 on the voucher, it goes to the bank and that company. It's got nothing to do with the city. Once we get the $205 for the card, and that money, the $200 is paid over to the company, which puts it on a credit card, basically.
Right.
For the
Yeah, well, we know there's a percentage of people that don't actually claim them, so lost money. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Annual investment strategy and portfolio review. Sale of land, rates and charges outstanding for more than 3 years, and Councillor Prodovnik, you're doing something there. 2020-21 budget review. Compliance audit return January 21 to 31st of December 2021. Item 8.1, main roads correspondence. C 1.1, Lloyd Street Bridge design. 1.2, assessment of elected member development applications. C 1.3, Councillor Kiley introduced land tax for vacant properties. C 1.4, Councillor Prodovnik, Devon Street Woodbridge. And C 1.1, taken by consent portion of, and that's a confidential item, taking a consent portion of Lot 7, Stock Road, Bullsbrook. Are there any other items, councillors? Thank you. I'll formally declare the meeting closed at 9:30.